Okay, thank you, Kathy. With that, excuse me, but a frog. I will call to order the Whatcom County Council meeting for June 1st, 2021. It is 6:02 p.m. and we're meeting virtually. Would you please call the roll?
Red Brown.
Can you hear me now? 30 years in the computer business didn't tell me a thing. Teach me a thing. Yes.
Barry Buchanan.
Here.
Tyler Bird. Tyler Bird. Todd Donovan.
Here.
Ben Ellenboss.
Present.
Carol Frazee.
Here.
Kathy Kirschner.
Councilmember Kirschner did notify me she would not be here, so she's excused tonight. So all council members are here with the exception of Councilmember Kirschner excused, and I suspect Mr. Bird is here since I see his icon. It looks like he's joining by phone.
I'm here. For some reason, it moved me to yeah. So I'm here. Thank you.
We got you. Okay, could you please display the flag and rise and join me for the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which we stand, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, that brings us to the county executive's report. Mr. Sadhu, are you there?
Sorry about that, a little technical difficulty. All right, I am here and I would, good evening, council and Whatcom County residents. Whatcom County has been allocated $44,528,542 under the coronavirus state and local fiscal recovery funds authorized under the American Rescue Plan Act. The first 50% installment has been deposited and the second is expected in approximately 12 months. My administration and county council are initiating discussions on the plans to invest these rescue plan funds where it can bring in most benefits to our community and Whatcom County government. We will start the discussion with council and community at large to establish priorities, identify opportunities, and take the appropriate next steps. General framework of ARPA, or American Rescue Plan Act. The federal government has identified 4 categories of expenses which are intended to be funded through state and local fiscal recovery funds in ARPA. Number 1, support urgent COVID-19 response efforts. Number 2, replace lost revenue to support vital public services and retain jobs. Number 3, support immediate economic stabilization. And number 4, address systemic public health and economic challenges. The Treasury has provided both high-level and more detailed collaborations. People can find it on the internet. To support, here is a little bit of explanation. To support public health expenditures such as COVID-19 mitigation, medical expenses, behavioral health care, and public health and safety staff. Now, to address the negative economic impact caused by COVID-19, like economic harm to the workers, to the households, economic harm to small businesses, local industries, and public sector in general. To replace the lost public sector revenue over past 14 months because of COVID-19, and to provide premium pay for essential workers in the critical infrastructure sectors. And finally, to invest in water, sewer, and broadband infrastructure. These funds must be obligated by December 31st, 2024, and must be expended completely with all work performed by December 31, 2026. Now, the guiding principle for use of ARPA funds. ARPA funds must be applied primarily to non-recurring expenditures. Don't create new programs or add-ons to existing programs that do not have a dedicated funding source upon exhaustion of ARPA funds. Investment in infrastructure is particularly well suited use of ARPA funds because it is one-time expenditure that can be targeted to strategically important long-term assets. There are several more buckets of money included in ARPA legislation and the state allocation from ARPA. We are researching more about these opportunities and work with our small cities and other local organizations who are eligible to apply for such grant funds. County government and countywide priorities. Compared to 1 year life cycle of CARES Act funding, ARPA funds have the extended timeline allowing till end of 2024. This allows time for thoughtful and deliberate decisions for the betterment of our organization and community to provide long-term resiliency. First, the county intends to utilize these funds in 2021 to support the continued efforts of urgent COVID-19 public health response efforts, to replace lost public sector revenue, and to rebuild and strengthen the county's vital public services by retaining, rehiring, and hiring for county jobs to sustain and improve the most post-pandemic level of service provided to the constituents of Whatcom County. The county administration will be bringing forward budget supplements between now and the end of this year to implement this to ensure the continuity of vital government services. Second, the county administration also intends to work with community seeking ideas, projects for long-term resilient framework on how to best utilize this substantial infusion of resources to help turn the tide on pandemic, strengthen the public health system, provide economic stabilization, and lay foundation for a strong and thriving economy. This process will be timed along with the upcoming mid-biennium budget process through the fall of 2021. It is envisioned that we will continue our collaboration between the public sector, which is Whatcom County government, City of Bellingham, small cities, Port of Bellingham, and the nonprofit sector, Food Security Task Force, Child Care Task Force, Child and Family Task Force, Housing and Human Services agencies, and other local foundations to formulate and prioritize countywide programs for ARPA expenditure. We will be seeking more clarification from Treasury and state on ARPA fund use guidelines over next several months, and we are submitting questions through NACO to Treasury for certain steps that which are more adaptable to small rural county like ours than big cities like Seattle or counties like King County. County administration will be bringing forward a proposal for consideration by the council on few immediate priorities over next few weeks, such as personnel cost, frozen positions, clear the backlog of court cases, and a grant writing project. We all know that Congress is working on a sweeping infrastructure package through job plan, and a family plan legislations in the current year. Access to these funds will be contingent on our ability to identify opportunities, align projects with funding eligibility requirements, and submit well-written and timely applications. We will be discussing in future council meetings to prioritize investments in childcare, behavioral health, affordable housing, broadband infrastructure, and homeless issues and long-term low-income housing investments. And this discussion shall continue over the next couple of years. Thank you very much, and I'll be happy to answer any questions if somebody has.
Thank you, Executive Sadhu. Any questions? Looks like we have no questions. Thank you again, Executive
Thank
Sadhu.
you.
Okay, next up is 3 sets of minutes we have to approve. Could I get a motion to approve?
Move approval.
Second.
Bird moves, Councilmember Frazee seconds. Discussion, corrections to these minutes at all? Seeing none, please call the roll.
Red Brown,
Yes.
Barry Buchanan,
Yes.
Tyler Bird,
Yes.
Todd Donovan,
Yes.
Ben Ellenboss,
Yes.
Carol Frazee,
Yes.
and Kathy Kirschner is excused.
That passes 6-0 with Councilmember Kirschner excused. Okay, next up is our public hearings for tonight. The first one is AB 2021-261, ordinance granting Cellco Partnership doing business as Verizon Wireless a non-exclusive franchise for the provision of wireless telecommunication services. Is there anything that staff has for us that we haven't heard yet? Is there anything new? Dana, I see is that your hand up?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, it's working now.
Okay. I just wondered if you wanted Kathy to roll the video prior to the hearing.
Oh, yes, we will.
Thanks.
Anything from staff before we do that? Okay, Kathy, go ahead and roll the video that shows how folks can join the public hearing.
Welcome to the meeting. For instructions on how to join the meeting to speak, please visit whatcomcounty.us/join-virtual-council. Meeting information, including Zoom meeting link, phone number, webinar or meeting ID, and password are available under the meeting date at the bottom of the page. Members of the public may join the meeting online or by phone. The meeting is broadcast live and recorded. All speakers will have 3 minutes. When you've joined the meeting, please virtually raise your hand to request to speak. To virtually raise your hand online, click the hand icon at the lower area of your screen. To virtually raise your hand by phone, dial *9 on your keypad. Council staff will call on you by the name listed, or if you're joining by phone, by the last 3 digits of the phone number from which you're calling. When called upon to speak, click the microphone icon to unmute, or if joining by phone, wait till you hear a message indicating the host unmuted your phone. Please first state your full name for the record. Staff will announce when your 3-minute speaking time is up. Camera sharing will not be offered at this meeting. Thank you for joining the meeting.
Okay, thank you. Dana, did you still have something or your hand is still up? Okay, now it isn't. Okay, we will open the public hearing. Do we have anyone that wishes to speak on the non-exclusive franchise agreement?
There are no hands raised at this time.
Okay, we'll close the public hearing. Council, what's your wishes?
Move approval.
Councilmember Byrd moves approval. Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, Councilmember Frazee seconds. Discussion on the motion? Okay, please call the roll.
Barry Buchanan,
Yes.
Tyler Bird,
Yes.
Todd Donovan,
Yes.
Ben Ellenboss, Ben Ellenboss,
Yes.
Carol Frazee,
Yes.
Kathy Kirschner is absent. Red Brown,
Yes.
That passes 6-0 with Councilmember Kirschner excused. Next public hearing is AB 2021-278, ordinance submitting to the qualified voters of Whatcom County a proposal to amend Whatcom County Charter sections 5.40 and 5.41 to align signature requirements for citizen initiatives with Washington state norms. Anybody have anything they want to say before we open the public hearing? Okay, we will open the public hearing. Is there anyone that would like to speak on this matter?
the first speaker is Cindy Madigan, and then we'll go to Nancy Shang and Andrew Hansen. Go ahead, please, Cindy. State your full name for the record. You have 3 minutes.
Hello, good evening. My name is Cindy Madigan, and I am speaking on behalf of the League of Women Voters of Bellingham, Whatcom County in my role as advocacy chair with the board of directors. The League does not support or oppose any candidates for office or political parties. We take positions on important policy issues following lengthy, in-depth research and with member consensus. These positions inform our legislative advocacy work. Our co-presidents have also submitted a written statement in support of the proposed ordinance 278. The League of Women Voters of Washington's position on representative government has long supported access for citizens to initiate or modify legislation through the initiative and referendum process. Using votes cast in the last gubernatorial election sets a disproportionately high bar for gathering signatures and differs from the norm used in other local governments. The League supports placing this proposition on the November 2021 ballot to change the basis for obtaining signatures for initiatives to align with participation in local elections. Thank you.
The next speaker is Nancy Shang. Go ahead, please. State your full name for the record. You have 3 minutes.
Yes, thank you. And good evening to the council. My name is Nancy Kelly Shang, and I speak to you tonight in favor of AB 2021-278, signature requirements for citizen initiative, and also in favor of AB 2021-279, signature requirements for charter amendments. At present, I understand that Whatcom County sets a much higher standard for collecting citizen signatures for citizen initiatives and charter amendments than many other cities and counties across our state. In fact, there have been no county initiatives placed by citizens, not the county council, in the last 20 years. To require percentages from the statewide governor's race makes no sense at the city and county level and discourages citizens from even trying. For city initiatives, requirements should be based on the last mayor's election. For the county, signatures should be based on a percentage of the last race for county executive. We live in an age where casting a vote is becoming more and more challenging than ever. Literally hundreds of regulations are being put in place in other states to restrict how and when a person can vote. We citizens in Washington state should take pride in how our elections are run securely through the mail, utilizing safe and convenient drop boxes, verifying each and every signature on ballots. I've personally observed a recount for a recent close election and have nothing but praise for how our Whatcom County auditor and staff conduct business for us. Citizen initiatives are an extremely important tool for democracy and can stimulate higher interest and higher voter turnout, particularly in local elections. I believe this is a nonpartisan issue. I'm also a member of the League of Women Voters, and I hope the county council representatives can all agree that lowering the signature requirements for citizen initiatives and charter amendments will stimulate more and better representation for us all, regardless of party affiliations. Thank you.
next speaker is Andrew Hansen. Go ahead, please state your full name for the record. You have 3 minutes.
Hello, my name is Andrew Hansen. I am a lifelong Ferndale resident. I have lived there 22 years of the 22 years of my life. I am here in support of this resolution and the next resolution to lower the bar for signature gathering to get initiatives on the ballot here in Whatcom County. I believe that citizens should have the right to participate as directly in their democracy as possible. And as it's already been said, the requirements that we have in Whatcom County right now are already higher than they are in other counties in the state. I believe that this is a nonpartisan issue, that all groups of people should have a reasonable chance at being able to affect change in their community that they want to see directly if their elected officials are not going by the will of the people as they see it. So I hope that all members will vote in support of this resolution and the next one. Thank you for your time.
If anyone else would like to speak on this public hearing item, please raise your hand by clicking the hand icon or dialing *9 if you're joining by phone. There are no other hands raised.
Okay. What's the will of the council?
Move to approve.
Second.
So we have a motion and a second. Before we get started, I just wanted to note that this is a supermajority vote required to pass. So it takes 5 votes. And this is to place this on the ballot. So let's start discussion. I see Mr. Ellenboss's hand is up. Go ahead, sir.
Okay, so I thought we were going to hold this open for an extra 2 weeks. Are we not doing that now?
Dana, I didn't recall that discussion. Dana?
Yep.
I thought when Rod
We
brought
did.
it forward, he said, let's keep it open for longer than normal.
We did. This is 4 weeks.
Dana is correct. It was introduced 4 weeks ago.
Okay, so that is what happened. Other discussion on the motion? Councilmember Ellenboss?
Yeah, so I'm speaking not in favor of this motion and not so much against the content of it, because I don't think it's probably a bad idea. I however don't agree with council taking action in regards to the charter. To me, that's kind of like the lunatics run the asylum. That's probably not a PC way of saying that, but I couldn't think of another way to put it. I think that our ability to amend or put things on the ballot to amend the charter is there for situations that are dire or more dire than this. And so I don't think we should do this, because it sort of skirts the intent of the charter review process.
Councilmember Donovan?
I think the motion right now is for the statutory change. We haven't got to the. Do I have this out of order? And then there's a separate one for the charter. I think I got that right. There's two separate votes. One is for aligning the signature requirements for Whatcom County with citizens initiatives that are not charter reviews, and that's AB 2021-278. And then there's a second vote on AB 2021-279, which is the charter issue. So this isn't the charter issue yet, I believe.
Somebody's gonna have to explain that a little better than that, because that's not how this reads. Dana, can you help us out?
Barry, they both would be amendments to the charter if passed.
Yeah.
That's the way I see it. One is section 5, two different recitals, and one is section 8 for the next one. Yeah, Todd, go ahead.
But as far as the lunatics running the asylum, whatever Ben said about the charter review process, I believe that 279 has to do with changing the signature requirement for charter initiatives. This is changing, the 278 is changing signature rules about non-charter issues, and they're different signature requirements. There's a I think it's an 8% bar for the non-charter issues that are up in 278, and then it's a higher bar for 279. But they're separate things that have to be voted on individually, and the item right now is not the charter issue. I mean, it's not to amend the charter.
Oh yeah, I see what you're saying. It is the charter, but it's not. I understand. It's the mini initiative or the initiative process, right?
Right. So the charter initiative thing that Mr. Ellenboss was speaking about, that we have a charter review process to amend the charter, that's the next ordinance that's up.
Okay, does everybody understand that? Councilmember Brown?
Yeah, one of the reasons I was persuaded to support this is that in the last charter review, the Charter Review Commission proposed and the citizens agreed that they wanted it to be easier to be able to vote. And that was expressed in the amendment to the charter for district only voting, and the argument was given that it was easier for someone to run for office if they didn't have to campaign throughout the whole county if they came from a particular district. And the citizens liked that, and they agreed with the Charter Commission. And this is really no different. This is an extension of the same philosophy. It's about lowering the barrier, just like we did with district only voting. It's about lowering the barrier for citizens to participate in their election. I'm hoping, Mr. Ellenboss, that you would agree with that. It's the same principle. And mind you, we're simply, just as with the Charter Review Commission, neither the council or the Charter Review Commission gets to decide the issue. All we do, and all the Charter Review Commission did, is put the motion to the citizens to tell us what they wanted. And I'm hoping that you'll give them that choice rather than remove that choice from them.
Councilmember Ellenboss?
Yeah, so you guys are both completely confused on what I'm getting at here. I'm not saying this is a bad government or bad idea. And I think that your generalization around the reason for district only voting is, I'm not sure that was the key element there. What I'm saying is that the charter is there like our Constitution for Whatcom County. It guides us. If it was supposed to be easy for us to change, or if it was supposed to be for the if the intent was for the legislative body to own the charter, then we never would have come up with the charter review process. So what I'm saying is that the only reason council even has the ability to put something out to the voters to change the charter is for a certain purpose. That purpose is not this, and that things like this change, whether good or bad, the intent was for it to go through that charter review process, which is set to happen in what, 3 or 4 years from now. So I'm not saying this is a bad idea. I'm saying that we should reserve, as the council, we should reserve our ability to make amendments to the charter by putting something on the ballot, and not just use it for whatever we want to use it for. It's there for certain purposes, like emergency situations, and I'm not so sure that this qualifies.
Councilmember Frazee?
Yeah, I'm trying to think of what Councilmember Ellenboss is saying, because I'm seeing it different. So like Ms. Shang said, in the last 20 years, no one has brought an initiative forward, no citizens, because the bar is so high. Like right now, I think we need over 11,000 signatures in order to bring something forward. And this would put it a little lower, like maybe 6,500 signatures in order for citizens to have more of a voice. So I am in support of this because I think we do need more. I think allowing citizens to have more input is always good in government.
Councilmember Byrd?
Thanks. I just wondered, could we get an example of what the two different initiatives and how one would apply to each of these, so we can see how they would differ? Does anyone have an example that they could give for each of these that might showcase that difference?
I don't understand the question.
Yeah, I don't understand the question.
Okay, so we have two items on that we're voting on, and they're both different as far as how they're going to change the charter and how they will allow the community to engage. So I'm wondering if there's an example. This one, community members, instead of having 11,000 community members sign, you will need 6,000, and then they can put what on the ballot versus the other one, and how is that one different than this one?
Councilmember Donovan?
Try it. So the first one, change the signature requirements to put, which would something be the equivalent of like what we do as an ordinance. The second one, which we don't have a motion to discuss, but you can't separate those easily, would be to to harmonize the signature requirements for citizens to bring forward charter amendments. So that, and they're two separate sections of the charter, so they're two separate ordinances. But both are empowering people to be able to bring things forward outside of the legislative process. But there's, so that I don't know if I'm answering your question, Tyler, but that's, so one is in the charter section about non-charter. So there's a signature requirement for non-charter measures. And there's another signature requirement for charter measures. This one we're talking about right now is for non-charter measures. But for both of these, the barrier has been so high, nobody's been able to do these, except every 10 years we have a charter review commission. And even when the charter review commission, which Ben and I were on, tried to lower, and we lowered the signature requirements. We proposed that, that was a bipartisan vote. The voters approved both of those, but we didn't realize when we did that, I didn't even think of this, that we set it to the gubernatorial vote rather than the local vote here for our executive. So you got to collect signatures equal to whatever King County does voting for governor, rather than what Whatcom County does voting for executive. And that we didn't realize that, I think, at the charter thing. So, but yeah, so that's not specific examples, but that's the qualitative difference between the two. They're very different things in terms of what people would be able to get on the ballot. So this one would be non-charter issues.
God, that was a great explanation. Thank you. And then as far as the difference between the gubernatorial and the executive, Is that the number of people that actually are voting in the most recent, or is that the number of people that could vote for the executive race?
It's votes right now. It's votes cast in the most recent gubernatorial election. Rather, what these proposals would be votes cast in the recent executive election in Whatcom County, and other counties do that. But we right now have it based on votes cast in the gubernatorial election. So the percentages will be the same. It's the benchmark that they're judged by will change.
Executive Sadhu?
Yes, maybe I can give you an example. Suppose you want to change the term of the county executive, which is in a charter. And what this is doing to change that, if public wants to do that, now they have 12,000 people have to sign, bring it to the council, say, council, we want this change. The council does not have more say than that. Council just says, okay, let's put it on the ballot. What is the wish of the people? And people will vote on it and change it. Right now, that requirement is that 12,000 people should put on a petition to even come to the council to ask for a change. What this does is reduce that. This is tied to governor's election, but what this does is ties to the county executive's election, how many people voted for that. This is not that council can change anything. It is just a citizen's petition, which is put in front of the council, which puts on the ballot, period. And then the public decides that. The second one is, suppose we want to change zoning or zoning code or certain things that, we have single family zoning. We say we want to change that, which is non-charter initiative. Now, 12,000 people have to come up with the petition, sign it, and the council then can put it on the ballot. It's still public decides. But now the thing is, those are out of whack. The public has no voice because where are you going to get 12,000 people for any change? And it's just lowering that to say 6,000, whatever the number is. And then all council does is put it on there. This is not changing the charter. It is actually allowing public, who are the actual owners of the charter, is the public, our voters, is asking their permission. Would you allow us to change the charter? So this is just affording an opportunity for public to vote. That's how I understand. Thank you.
That answer your question, Tyler?
Yeah, that answers my question. So a follow-up question: has anyone ever tried to get an initiative on the ballot and failed because it's too high? Just that we know of, out of curiosity.
Councilmember Donovan?
Yeah, well, two things. Yeah, I think years ago there have been some efforts that didn't succeed, but it's also no one bothers to try because the barriers are so high.
Councilmember Ellenboss?
Yeah, so I hear us. If you sit down and talk to the folks that, when we became a home rule charter county, their intent was never for the council to be putting out ballot initiatives to change things. So like, for example, in the example that Executive Sadhu just gave, he's like, you bring it to the council and they put it on the ballot. Well, that wasn't the intent of how we changed the charter. Intent was that it would get reviewed with a lengthy process with people who were elected specifically to do that. It wasn't for it to just be willy-nilly. The council can just do it whenever they want. Otherwise, you wouldn't have the higher threshold for the vote. When you talk to the folks who are hanging on the wall there, the ones of them that are still alive, they'll absolutely tell you that they never intended for the legislative body to be putting things on the ballot to change the charter. And so my argument against this is that that's what we're doing here, and that that's not the intent of how our government was created to run locally. And that's my opposition to it. Quite frankly, if it comes on the ballot, I might vote for it. However, I'm not going to support it here because I want it to go through the intended process, which would be through the Charter Review Commission.
So I think Councilmember Brown, you were next, and then then Executive Sadhu, and then Councilmember Donovan.
Having lived in Washington for a while, and particularly having served on WASAC, I've come to really appreciate the foresight of our predecessors in terms of turning this into a home rule charter county. I mean, it's all about bringing back the power to the people who are affected. One of the things that I also like about this is, you know, if someone in the North County wants to do, someone in the rural area wants to do an initiative, or mini initiative, let's say initiative, to try and get 12,000 signatures by walking around the rural part of the county is incredibly more difficult than trying to do the same thing in Bellingham. And I would have thought that anybody in the rural community would be supportive of making it easier for the rural community to be able to put something on the ballot if they want to. So, you know, I just think this is more democratic, and it's actually more in line with what the original intent of becoming a home rule charter county was in the first place.
Executive Sadhu.
I was going to say that this is not the council which is putting on initiative. Somebody, if a council member suggests, without going for a petition or anything, one council member says, let's change the charter with this, and the rest of the council member vote and put it on there. That is a different process. It used to be a process which was effectively shut down with 7-0 vote. And that's an asinine thing. But anyways, that's done, it's done. But this one is just allowing the public, the real owners of the charter. How could 15 people elected for charter commission could have more power, those 15 people, than the people themselves? I mean, that's the whole argument. It's the charter belongs to people. And we have to allow people to be able to express, if they are able to express that they want some change. How come those 15 people get that superpower, not the public does? To me, public has more superpower than 15 people or the council. That's how I interpret it.
Councilmember Donovan.
I'm glad to hear the executives given Ben and I superpowers as former charter review folks. But no, to echo the point that this doesn't, because I think Ms. John was saying this is the council putting stuff on. This is the council has nothing to do with putting stuff on the ballot here. It's an avenue that is in the charter presently for people to put stuff on the ballot, and we're making it less challenging for people outside of government to put things on the ballot. It has nothing. Council has no say if they get the signatures in terms of what goes on the ballot or not with this measure.
Councilmember Byrd.
Thanks. Ben, I hear what you're saying. Something that you said kind of struck me, and I think there's a lot of truth in that. And that is, while it's not necessarily the intention of the law to allow us right now, or of the charter to allow community members to, without having those 11,000 signatures, put something on the ballot, what is happening is that people are able to go through the council based on the council majority and have things that maybe they can place on the ballot, whereas if the council majority doesn't agree with others, they can't get on without that exception of 11,000. And this balances that out a little bit more and helps take the council out of it, so we're acting as those superheroes that are deciding everything for people when we shouldn't be. And I do like that idea, is that we're evening the playing field for everyone to have equal input versus the people who are friends on the council. So I'm in favor of it from that standpoint. The argument of like, I don't think it's too much of a barrier if people haven't actually tried in recent history. I could see if there was multiple attempts and we weren't getting it and we were just coming short, then that to me would say it's a barrier. So that part of the argument doesn't stick so much for me, but I do like that. I love the idea of community engagement. There's been a whole bunch of things over the last several years now where I thought that we should put it on the ballot. And, Point Roberts is a great example of that. There's been several things out there, but Point Roberts isn't big enough to get 11,000 votes, and not enough people are interested in Point Roberts subjects or topics to be in favor of that potentially. And so this makes it easier for those jurisdictions and small areas to have that representation too. So I like that for that reason.
Councilmember Brown.
I'll yield to Ben and then I'll come back to me.
Okay, Councilmember Ellenboss.
I think you guys are confusing what I'm saying here. I'm not putting forth an argument for the content of what we're asking for here. Am I wrong that if we pass this, it will then be on the ballot, which will then change the charter? My argument is that we as the legislative body were not intended to do that. The people that were intended to do that were the Charter Review Commission. That's how our home rule charter is set up, for changes for the charter to be brought through the commission to then debate, talk about, bring forward to the public to vote on. The legislative body was given that power to do that. I'm only in emergency situations, basically, to change things that were so out of whack that they couldn't wait another 10 years or 5 years or 4 years or however until the next charter review process. What I'm saying here is that this, in my mind, doesn't foot the bill, or however that saying goes. It doesn't fit that criteria in my mind that we should be doing it. If this was coming before me as the charter review chair, I would say, yeah, let's throw this on the ballot. But since it's before me as a county council member and the charter governs the way we do business, that's where I'm saying it's the lunatics running the asylum, because that document guides the way we operate and all of our county, everything about what we do. We shouldn't be the ones that are bringing forth changes to it. So when you talk about, oh, why does the charter review commissioners, why do they have these superpowers? They don't have superpowers, but what they are is they aren't us. And that's the point. Those charter review commissioners are not county council members, and the charter is there to guide us and to give us direction and operating parameters, and we shouldn't be the ones that are bringing these things forward to put to the voters. And I think that the folks who put together the home rule charter originally, that was their intent. They didn't intend for us to be tweaking it and sending it to the voters. They intended for that charter review process to do it, because the charter review is there for 1 year and then it's gone. It's actually more like 6 months. But typically speaking, those folks are not county council members. And so when I kind of stand by what I said, it's like the lunatics running the asylum if we're going to get into bringing this stuff forward. And you know what? The last charter review process, the council brought forward a competing amendment to the charter with what the charter review brought forward. And I don't think that should have happened at that time either. So it's not the content of what's coming forward right now that I oppose. I'm opposing the process of us doing it. And I would hope that everyone can recognize that. But as I hear you guys making comments back to me, I think you're confused with what I'm trying to say here. So like, what does it take to amend the Constitution? It's something like, what, 2/3 of the states have to ratify it? Because it needs to be hard for the Constitution to be changed. Same goes for our charter. It should be hard for our charter to be changed. Otherwise, we're going to be operating under different rules every 2 or 3 years. Depends on how it goes. I mean, how many times do we flip-flop back and forth between district only and countywide and district only and countywide? It's not conducive for any form of stability, in my opinion. And that's why it's hard to change. And so I think I agree in principle with, you know, lowering the number of signatures that need to be collected. However, I don't agree in principle to the council proposing these changes to get put on the ballot to be voted on. See what I'm getting at? I hope I'm crystal clear, even though normally I'm not. You like that Wyatt Earp mustache?
Councilmember Brown.
Oh, I was, the very first thing I was going to say, Ben, was I didn't recognize you with the mustache. You know, I challenge you just to think back, though, that the original writers of the charter, you know, included 3 avenues to put things on the ballots. This is, we're not, I mean, they're the ones that put it there. It's the Charter Review Commission, it's the council, or it's the citizens. But then they also said, but ultimately it's the citizens are the ones who decide what will pass. So we're not doing anything different. We're not the lunatics in the asylum, or if we are, the original writers of the charter wanted the lunatics to be able to have that ability to put it on the charter, just as much as they wanted the Charter Review Commission or the citizens. I'll just finish up and give you one thing for thought. One of the other reasons I like this is we have no recall mechanism. If you have an elected official that goes absolutely nuts and is absolutely acting in a way that the majority of the citizens cannot stand, there is no way to get rid of them except by the initiative procedure. And this gives the citizens the ability to recall someone if they think they're doing a really bad job. And without it, they don't, it's just too high a threshold.
Mr. Donovan?
Nothing personal, Mr. Sadu.
We can't hear you, Todd. Todd, you're on mute.
Got you. I thought I heard you say, I hear you, Todd, but you said, I can't hear you, Todd. Yeah, okay. But I would hope we could stop calling the voters or whoever lunatics. That's really offensive. And maybe read
calling
section,
us lunatics, Todd.
Maybe, okay, well, that's body. Just as offensive, Mr. Ellenbus. I was speaking, and I'm actually speaking to some of the misinformation that you're disseminating. Section 8.23 of the charter says amendments by the county council. The county council may propose amendments to the charter by enacting an ordinance to submit a proposed amendment to the voters at the next November election. So it's not us acting out of bounds. That is in the charter and your mystical founding fathers of the charter or whatever. This right now, I'm trying to focus on this one proposal and then move on to the second one. But this is about giving citizens the ability to propose things separate from the council and even separate from the Charter Review Commission, and it's consistent with what is in the charter. And whether you're calling us lunatics or whether you're calling the voters lunatics, or you're calling the people who put that section in the charter lunatics, it's kind of offensive, Ben.
Councilmember Byrd.
Well, if I have a vote, we're definitely lunatics. So it's the only explanation I have for why we're all here. But okay, Ben, I hear what you're saying, and that definitely resonates with me on the next topic specifically. This one, it does feel like it's following the process that was laid out, in which it's coming to the council, it's having that open hearing. It would take a supermajority of the council or the legislative body to approve and put on the ballot. And because it pertains specifically and only to ordinances, it allows some flexibility there for the community to engage where if they feel like they're not being heard or their item isn't getting the attention that they need. I do think that there's good reason that there has to be a percentage of the votes, and it's a high percentage, and that we don't allow just one or two people to say, hey, I want this on there, and everything ends up on the ballot. I mean, outside of just cost requirements for that, I mean, we want to know that there's enough interest from the general community and that it has enough strength behind it to actually merit being on the ballot for everyone to vote on. So I see what you're saying. It definitely, for me, it resonates for the next item a lot. But on this one, I like the idea of the community being able to put forward and having a process to put forward ordinances that don't affect the charter outside of this specific amendment that allows them to do that. That's going through the correct process.
Councilmember Ellenboss and then Executive Sadoo.
Okay, so it's a figure of speech, so please don't be offended. If you know, I'm sorry that my colloquial dialect offends you. But if these founding fathers aren't mythical beings, in fact, if you look at whose name is in the hall, my last name's on that document because I have relatives that were involved, and maybe that's why I can speak with somewhat of an authority on what their intent was, because I've had the conversation with not only them, but I've met a lot of these people as I was a younger man when they were still alive. And we had conversations such as this, as I tried to understand local government. So I don't think they're mythical beings. They're actual people. And their intent was to make the charter hard to change. And Tyler, to what you're saying, that this one or that one, right now we are doing the process of amending the charter. Just in what we're doing with both of these issues. So that's why I'm saying I'm not opposed to the content of what these are. I'm opposed to this process because we're doing exactly what we probably shouldn't be doing with both of them. They're not bad ideas. Don't get me wrong. They're not bad ideas, but they should follow the charter review process and go the intended route. Our ability to change the charter was put there, like I said, for emergency purposes, which is why there's a high threshold of number of council members that need to do it. And is it 5 or is it 7? Because is it 5? Okay. So that threshold is high for a reason, and that threshold is only that high typically for emergency purposes. And so I'm not sure that this initiative, while it could be good government, meets that threshold of being an emergency.
Executive Sadoo and then Councilmember Frazee.
Ben, I would like to bring your attention to the preamble of the charter. Power must reside with the voters, with the residents. Whatever argument you're making is fine, but the spirit of this document is the public comes first. And this change is just allowing the public to be able to express their wishes. That's all. County council is not doing anything, it's just allowing, opening that, making that opening for the public to, and then ultimately, is 15 people out of that 8 people is vote is more important than 140, 150,000 voters voting on it? I mean, I don't understand your logic. This is going to put in front of 140,000 people. And you are saying 8 people on the Charter Commission are more important and they should be changing it, not 140,000 people. I don't get it.
Councilmember Frazee?
Councilmember Ellenboss, I think I heard you say that you don't like the process of it, council changing it, changing this, but in order for it to change, we're gonna have to wait. So it's every 10 years, I believe, the review commission, the County Charter Review Commission. So we'd have to wait till, I guess that's 2025. So the other way for it to make a change would be for 11,035 people to gather signatures and make a change. And like we said, last 20 years it's not happened because it's such a huge number. So this is a way that we could do it where 6,459 people could get enough signatures. It's still going to be very difficult, but it could occur. So I guess I don't see the logic of, I guess all I can see is this is giving the citizens more voice. And I don't see what's wrong with that. If I could hear what is wrong with that, I would agree, but I still haven't heard an argument where giving the citizens of Whatcom County more voice instead of the top 7 or whoever many's on the Charter Review Commission, more voice is always better.
Councilmember Byrd and then Ellenboss.
I love that more voice is always better. I want to apply that to the Drayton Harbor shooting zone and the garbage issue in Point Roberts and everything else. Yeah, that'd be great. So I also, it's funny because the state ledge passed a couple of years ago this rule that said homeowners association, they would have to have a 60%, so super majority of all registered homeowners. So it wasn't even the people who voted in the election. It was, you had to have 60% just to have something voted or the budget voted down for an HOA. And that one made no sense. So maybe we can all write to them and say, hey, you're crazy. You should go this way. Okay, back on track. There is a reason, though, that there is a limit, right? And we can all agree on that. Otherwise, we wouldn't be in these seats. What would happen is that every ordinance that would need to be passed, we put it on the ballot, and the community as a whole would vote on everything, and these jobs wouldn't exist. So there's a reason that there is a requirement, and there's a reason that the requirement has a certain height or a certain level of difficulty in order to initiate a ballot request. I don't know that 11,000 is really that high if you think about it. I mean, we have over 200,000 people in Whatcom County. And are we not over 200,000 actual registered voters now too? I think we're pretty darn close. So that would put this at, 5% of the population has to sign something to get it on the ballot. 2.5% is a pretty low benchmark to get something on the ballot of everyone. Now, with that said, it is going to everyone to vote on. And those votes don't change the charter. It's this vote that would potentially change the charter if it was passed. Those votes would just be able to enact ordinances, right? So I'm still going to be in favor of this, but let me ask this because I'm not 100% clear on this. If we vote yes and approve this, will this then go on the ballot for the general public to vote on? And then based on that, be decided in November?
The voters decided in November, not us.
Okay. All right. Thanks, Rod.
Councilmember Ellenboss.
I understand that folks are confused by what I'm saying because it's very clear that the majority here are What I'm saying is, you keep focusing on like, oh, we're making it easier for the citizens to speak. And I'm like, that's not what I'm opposed to. I'm not opposed to lowering the number of signatures it takes or whatever. What I'm opposed to is exactly what we're doing. This process is not for us to do. This process is for the charter review to do. And this high number of citizen signatures that need to be, hi honey, this high number of signatures that need to be gathered are a recent issue. It wasn't like that before because you didn't have as high of voter turnout in past elections, but this election we had, you know, whatever it was, 88, 90% turnout. And so it's a percentage of that it takes to get the signatures. So this hasn't been this overwhelming barrier that we could, you know, to reach for the last 20 years. It was a lower number before because the voter turnout was lower. This has only been an issue since the last presidential. It's an issue because the presidential election aligned with the governor's race, which is what the benchmark is. And so it's only been since then that this number has been this high. But that's beside the point. The point isn't that these are bad ideas. The point is that the council shouldn't be changing the charter. And with both of these two things that are coming up that we're talking about right here, this in and of itself is the council presenting to the people to change the charter. And that's where I'm taking issue, is that the council should not do that. Unless we meet certain criteria, and these two issues, in my mind, don't meet that criteria. So what are we at here? What is it, 2021? So in 4 years, we can change these numbers. In fact, these numbers might lower again because we'll have another presidential election in what, 2024, and it might not even be an issue. Those numbers, that threshold could drop if we don't have good voter turnout. So I'm not saying that the content is wrong. I'm saying that process matters. The process in which we operate under matters. The Constitution matters. Our state constitution matters. Our charter matters. And it's not for us to be putting things to the voters whenever we feel like we need to in order to change those rules. The benchmark is there and it's hard to meet for a reason. And that's what I oppose. I don't oppose, I'm not in this moment opposing the content of these two issues. I'm opposing the process of us putting these issues on the ballot.
So my question to you, Councilmember Ellenboss, is if you feel that strongly about this, why didn't you suggest this during the last charter review? Because it's clearly in the charter that is an avenue for the council to do. Secondly, no one in their right mind would appoint or would have a commission that is put in place every 10 years for them to be a one and done. It doesn't make any sense. Councilmember Brown.
Ben, I've just done a word search on the county charter, and your perspective is that the council, well, a couple of things. You said that the council shouldn't be changing the charter. Well, the council's not changing the charter. The council is asking the voters if they want to change the charter. But the other part that you'd said was that it was not the intent of the charter for the council to put forward anything unless it was an emergency, I think was your words. Well, the word emergency is only used in very specific cases in the charter, and it relates to emergency ordinances which relate to spending money. There is no restriction that I can find, or no interpretation that the council should not put things to the citizens to consider unless it meets a certain criteria like you're claiming. If you could point us to the criteria that you're claiming, that would be helpful, but I can't find it. As best I can find, the citizens, the Charter Review Commission, and the council all have an equal right under the charter to put things forward.
Councilmember Donovan.
I want to get back to my flippant comment about the mythical, the folks who originally did the charter in the 1970s. Because Joe Ellenboss will always be a mythical person to me in the most respectful way, Ben. So I didn't mean to sound flippant about that. And I also, you mentioned the state constitution. The first words in the state constitution is all political power is inherent in the people, and government derives their just powers from the consent of the governed. So I think what we're doing is consistent with this. But I was just going to suggest we have two items that we're voting on here. So maybe we can get through this one, and again, we can continue the discussion and maybe get halfway there and get to the next one there. But I didn't mean to be flippant about the mythical. What was the phrase we called them? The freeholders, right? So, yeah.
Mr. Ellenboss.
Yeah, so don't worry, Todd. You didn't hurt my feeling at all. You typically don't, because I like you. But the charter, doesn't. Barry, you asked me a question specifically, and then you moved on to like 3 or 4 other people. So I believe that the conversation did come up during the charter review process, whether we should change the threshold from 5 to 7. And I couldn't remember whether that went through or not. That's why I asked the question from 5 to 7, because in the charter review process, we absolutely had the conversation of the council changing the charter. And mythical beings were on the charter review last time who were freeholders, and they explained very clearly what the intent at the time was when they wrote the charter. And so yes, it was discussed. Yes, it did come up, and I believe that I think maybe our consensus was, it wasn't important enough to put forward because they felt 5 out of 7 was a high enough threshold to meet. But to answer Rudd's question, it's not written in there anywhere. I know these things from having conversations with folks. I know these things from thinking about it logically, because it so heavily has to do with how we do our business. That it stands to reason that we wouldn't be the ones that brought this forward, changes to the charter, because the power is inherently with the people, right? And so I believe that fully. And again, like I said, I'm not saying that this is poor government or that a little tweak here or there. I was fully on board. We did make it easier. We lowered, Todd, help me remember, we lowered from, what was it, 5% to 2.5%?
No, we lowered it to 8, but it was higher than that. But we didn't.
Yeah, it was ridiculously high, and we ran the numbers using all of the data that we had, and it was, I think we were fairly all in alignment. I mean, you can't get 15 people in alignment, but we were pretty much in alignment. That was probably a good thing. So I'm not arguing the content of both of these issues. What I'm saying that I have a problem with is the process. The process matters. The power is in the people's hands, but in the same breath, the process matters. And so my argument here is that this is not our place to be taking action. That the reason the charter review, there is something that meets every 10 years for a one and done. And it is the charter review process, because that was the process that got set out. Now the charter review process could change that and make it 5 if they want, but then it would go through that process. So here we are. I'll stand as my opinion as being the chair of the last charter review process. My opinion is that the council shouldn't take action on things that affect the charter, even if the people are the ones who vote on it, unless it's a dire emergency. And I don't think this meets that threshold, because it hasn't been a dire emergency in the past. And we even talked about making it easier to get initiatives through the last go around, knowing that it was the gubernatorial race that we looked at, because when we ran the numbers to see what would be realistic and attainable goals, we looked at the prior elections when we did it.
So Karen, you want to weigh in? I noticed you turned your camera on.
I can't help it. After all this discussion, I got somewhat involved the last time the Charter Review Commission met, and I've done a little searching, and it's interesting to me. I think that actually in the last vote on charter amendments, that provision was actually changed. I think originally the council had a lower threshold. It was only a majority vote to send something to the voters. And I think, and you Charter Review Commission members would remember this probably, I think that the Charter Review Commission recommended bringing the council threshold for referring things to the voters up to the same threshold as the Charter Review Commission, which is 2/3 vote. And so I think originally, actually, the charter may have set a lower threshold for the council that was only changed in 2015. That's all I'm going to say. It's kind of a puzzle.
Councilmember Brown.
So if we're relying on Mr. Ellenboss's interpretation that the charter intends, although it's not written that way, and respectfully, Ben, you haven't produced any evidence to support your argument that it is in any way written that way. But if the intent of the charter is to only have the council put forward stuff for the voters to consider in an emergency, then given the absence of instructions to that effect and the absence of instructions or guidance for the behavior of the Charter Review Commission, one must assume, therefore, that the Charter Review Commission should only have brought stuff forward to the voters if it was an emergency. Doesn't that logic hold true?
Mr. Ellenbach.
No, not at all, because the Charter Review Commission is not the county council, and they're not operating 24/7 under the charter like we do. So, and exactly what Karen's saying, the reason I'm saying that we've had these conversations on what the intent of the original freeholders was because they didn't intend for the council to propose changes to the voters on the charter. That's why the last charter review made it harder by moving it up to 5. And I recall the conversation was that there was quite a few that wanted more than 5, but I think that the 2/3 was logical. So, yeah, that's, I understand that the charter was written before I was born, I believe. So my ability to produce certain evidence is limited. However, having gone through the charter process, having had conversations with the original freeholders, and part of the last charter process was the discussion on, well, was it intended for the council to make changes? And the answer from the original freeholders was that wasn't exactly the intent. That's my reason that I oppose this. It has nothing to do, it has nothing to do with the content here. Because like I said, I supported lowering the threshold in the last charter review process. But that's the thing. It's the charter review, they're charter review commissioners. They're an elected body who is not the council that makes rules that the council operates under. Now we're the council, and now we're gonna have a say in the rules that we operate under, and granted, the voters have the final say. But I'll stand by my assertion that we have the charter review process, we have the citizens initiative process. I much prefer those two processes to change the charter than I prefer the council changing the charter or proposing changes to the charter. And so I understand that these items pertain to that. So fundamentally, I agree with them, but my fundamental stand that the process matters is trumping that, because I could get and quite honestly, when the people that decide how much we got paid wanted me to come and talk to them and sit in on their meetings, I said, no way am I going to have anything to do with you guys deciding on how much I get paid, because I'm not going to make that decision. The people need to make that decision, and I don't want to meddle in it in any way, shape, or form. And that's what I'm saying here. As a council member, I don't want to put forth initiatives that will change the charter, because like I said before, no offense to anyone, maybe what would it be? The fox garden, the hen house, maybe. Is that a better one for everybody? That's where I'm at on it.
Councilmember Brown?
Ben, I'm not going to argue with you that there was a discussion early on with the freeholders about limiting the powers of the council to put stuff forward for the voters to consider. I'm not going to argue because I wasn't there. But your argument is self-defeating, because if that discussion did occur, it must have been debated by the freeholders. It must have been debated by the participants, and the debate must have weighed in favor of not doing it, because otherwise it would have been reflected in the charter. So I'm not arguing that some people wanted it, but the majority didn't, because it never made it in the charter.
Mr. Donovan, then Executive Sadhu.
I'm not sure anybody's convincing anybody of any changing their positions here, and we're kind of digressing into this 5 versus 7 thing, which is not the motion before us. I don't want to call the question, but I'm just kind of like, can we round this one up maybe? And then, because there's a second vote on a issue that's maybe more related to some of where this conversation's been going. So somebody wanted to call the question. I'd vote for that, but I won't do that.
I'll let Ben speak and then I'll keep my mouth shut.
Executive Sadhu, and then back to Ben.
I just wanted to point out, Mr. Allenbass said that unless it is a dire emergency, who decides that? That's again, there could be a full argument. There could be 2 or 3 people say this is not emergency, no matter what it is. So I think that, that's all I will say. That dire emergency or not emergency is also very subjective. Thank you.
Mr. Ellenboss.
Yeah, and to Council Member Brown's point about it not being there in the first place, that was brought up in the conversation. This is my recollection, so it's all hearsay, right? But I believe the conversation circled around, well, we didn't foresee it being an issue because we didn't ever anticipate that, we would be doing it. So I don't know, I can't say historically speaking how many times the council has brought forth amendments to the charter for the voters, but I would guess it's not a lot. And so, like I said, the initiative issue was never an issue until now. and the needing a supermajority to get things on the ballot probably wasn't an issue, well, until now, because here we are doing it twice.
Okay, anything else? Going once, going
It was
twice.
a good conversation debate. Thanks, everyone.
Yep, it was. Okay, let's call the roll.
Tyler Bird,
Oh, you got to start with me? No, I'm going to vote yes.
Todd Donovan,
Yes.
Ben Ellenboss,
Absolutely not.
Carol Frazee,
Yes.
Kathy Kirschner is absent. Red Brown,
Yes.
Barry Buchanan,
Yes. So that passes 5-1 with Councilmember Kirschner excused. Our next public hearing is AB 2021-279. It's ordinance submitting to the qualified voters of Whatcom County a proposal to amend Whatcom County Charter, sections 8.22 to align requirements for amending the charter by citizen initiative with Washington state norms. So let's start. Do we have a motion?
Move approval.
Second.
Got Brown and Frazee moving and seconding. Okay, discussion on this item.
Hey, Barry,
Yes.
just a reminder that this is a hearing.
Oh, sorry. Yes. Thank you very much.
Yep.
So let's back up, unwind that motion. I apologize. And let's open the public hearing.
anyone wishing to speak during the public hearing can click on the hand icon on your screen or dial *9 if you're joining by phone. The first speaker is Cindy Madigan. Then we'll go to Andrew Hansen and Nancy Shang. Go ahead, Cindy. Please state your full name for the record.
Hello, my name is Cindy Madigan. I'm speaking on behalf of the League of Women Voters of Bellingham, Whatcom County. The League believes that representative government depends upon informed and active participation at all levels of government and should be responsive to the will of the people. Whatcom County supports the rights of citizens to make and remake their laws and to petition to place charter amendments directly on the ballot for other voters to consider. Section 8.2 of the charter amendment says charter amendments may be proposed by the commission, the county council, or the public. To improve access to this right, the League supports placing this proposition on the November 2021 ballot to allow voters to decide to normalize the basis for obtaining signatures for charter amendments to align with other local governments. This would still require 15% of the signatures of voters, but instead of being based on the votes cast for governor, it would be based on the votes cast in the local jurisdiction that this charter amendment is. And then after that, the voters still, even after doing this initiative, this petition, there's still the requirement that the voters decide. So it's still a high bar, and it is a way, though, for citizens to participate in their government, which is important for our representative democracy. Thank you.
The next speaker is Andrew Hansen. Go ahead, please state your full name for the record. You have 3 minutes.
Hello, my name is Andrew Hansen. I'm a lifelong resident of Ferndale. I think that the conversation that was had around the last resolution about the process of this was only really served to be a distraction to the real purpose of these resolutions. Whether or not the process of the council putting this forward to the people is the best way to do it. It sounds like the charter allows for this process to take place legally. And there have been multiple statements made that are in other documents stating how the people that are governed by this charter, the people that are governed by the state, are the ultimate decision makers when it comes to their government, and it comes to the purpose of why this council exists and why the county exists. And so if this is an avenue for achieving those things, and the values that have been stated in multiple different governing documents have said that the power should lie in the hands of the people, then this is absolutely what we should be doing, because it's not illegal and it stands for the values that have already been stated in other documents. You know, as a Ferndale resident, I would love it if county politics could stop being dominated by people in Bellingham and Bellingham politics in general, and that I and other members of the community that live outside of the Bellingham community can have an easier time getting issues that matter to us on the ballot, regardless of whether or not they directly affect the charter or not. Because ultimately, as it's been said, we should have the right to directly affect change in our communities, because that is the purpose of these local governments. So I would hope that all council members could vote in support of this resolution, as most council members did for the last one, because I think that regardless of the process, this is a step towards realizing a vision of real democracy and people having the power to affect change in their lives.
The next speaker is Nancy Shang. Go ahead, Nancy.
Okay, sorry about that. Had to figure out how to unmute myself again. Similar to the last discussion, I think it's what we're asking here is to put the decision in the voters' hands, and to have the county council put this initiative, or these two initiatives, on the ballot to let the voters decide, do we really want to base our initiative signatures on the governor's race, which is numbers statewide, or do we want to make it more reasonable and base it on county level or city level signatures that can be collected? These initiatives benefit people with initiative requests regardless of party. It's totally nonpartisan. And yes, it might change the charter, but of course the Charter Commission could presumably review that again when the question comes up. The current system really disadvantages the smaller communities of Ferndale, Nooksack, Everson, and so forth. So again, I would advocate voting in favor of this initiative. Thank you.
Next speaker is Dan Johnson. Go ahead, please. You have 3 minutes.
Good evening, everybody. I am Dan Johnson. Thank you for taking the time to hear me. I will be simply echoing Councilman Ellenboss's words, in that I'm not in disagreement with the proposals as much as it's the procedure in which it is being handled. I haven't seen anything definitively one way or the other in watching this conversation for the last hour, but I will say that it would be nice to task the council with finding out the answer so that we can know for next time. I also believe that in the event what is happening here tonight, if these two pass outside of what they're allowed to do in the charter, I would caution everybody in saying that it's a slippery slope. And once you crack the seal, it's hard to turn around and unring that bell and close that door. Thank you.
If anyone else would like to speak during this public hearing, please raise your hand virtually by clicking the hand icon on your screen or dialing *9 if you're joining by phone. There are no other hands raised at this time.
What's the will of the council? Councilmember Brown?
We did move approval, right? So,
Well, we undid that since we hadn't had the hearing yet. Let's redo that.
so I move approval.
Second again.
Okay, Brown and Frazee. Councilmember Brown, discussion.
Yeah, the last speaker brought up two things, and I also had an opportunity to think further about Mr. Ellenboss's earlier comments. Here's a couple of yes, it's hard to unring the bell. Yes, the King of England found that out. Once you give democracy to the people, they don't want to give it back. To Mr. Ellenboss's question about how hard it is to do things by ballot initiative, I did a word search of the charter and I looked for the expressions amended by ballot or amended by ordinance, which means the council amended it. The council has amended the charter 43 times, whereas the citizens have only been able to meet the threshold and amend it 15 times. That gives you an idea about how high the threshold has been for the citizens to propose an amendment to the charter. I'll leave it at that.
Other discussion? Councilmember Byrd?
This one's a bit different for me. For me, honestly, I want more time to think about this and get a better feeling for it. Because on one hand, I don't like the idea of us basing anything off of state numbers and the way the state necessarily is doing things. But on the other hand, it's really important that this is an important document. It is like our Constitution. And so I think that there needs to be a really high bar to be able to change it outside of the Charter Commission. And the amount of time and effort and energy that they put into things and figuring it out before they make those changes, or before they're able to propose changes to voters, I think is really important to any changes to the charter itself too. So I'm a little stuck on this one. If we vote on it today, I'm going to end up voting no. I think maybe abstaining, but I would like more time ultimately.
Councilmember Byrd, I agree with you. I'm going to make a motion to hold so we can do that kind of work that you just suggested.
Second.
Okay. Carol beat me.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Councilmember Donovan, discussion on the motion to hold.
There is a finite amount of time before we can put something before the voters. So what does your motion to hold do in terms
I would just make it for 2 weeks.
So 2 weeks gets us into the middle of June. That's probably, I don't know if we had any from the auditor's office on here.
August is the deadline. I believe it's right around primary time for the general election.
Yeah. I know that's the date I've heard, but I've also heard it's more. I'm not speaking against the motion. I just want to know what we're doing when we vote on this.
I believe Barry is correct. I believe it's on the website.
Councilmember Byrd?
Thanks. If we're going to hold it for 2 weeks to be able to go into this in more detail, which I appreciate, what I would like to be able to do is actually see some of the data that Ben had referred to that they looked at in the Charter Commission for this regarding the vote counts and what the differences are, and maybe some of the things that they considered, if there's any of the Charter Commission members that have that data still that they looked at back then the reasoning why they made those decisions. I want to understand that and how that data is working and going to impact this one.
Councilmember Ellenboss.
Yeah, like I said, I don't oppose this based off of the content of it. And I guess I would ask Councilmember Brown if he's got the charter and stuff in front of him, does it differentiate between council and charter review as far as how many came from where?
Not in the way it's written. It says amended by ordinance, amended by ballot, or amended by referendum.
Right. And so I believe how the charter review process works is that the charter review gives their recommendation to the council. The council then moves it forward. So I believe that amended by ordinance would still be the charter review process, if I remember correctly.
And you might, but I think you're reinforcing my argument, because what that's saying is the people have really been denied much opportunity to participate because the threshold is so high.
Well, but remember that threshold is a moving target, and that threshold has only been this high since the last presidential election when we had record voter turnout. And so that number of how many signatures is required has been much lower in the past. So the argument that this threshold is just of whatever the number is now based off of the last presidential election, which is the gubernatorial election, has only been an issue for 1 year. And so, again, I am not taking issue with the content that we're talking about here. I'm taking issue with the process. And I'll give you an example. The charter defines how we're elected. Should we be making changes to that, proposing that to the voters? I think anybody would say, no, you shouldn't decide how you're elected or hint to how you're elected in any way, shape, or form. And so that holds true for a lot of that entire document. It's our governing body. It sets out how we operate, how we do things. And it shouldn't be easy for us, the council, to propose changes. That's what I'm taking issue in. I don't think we, as the council, should be proposing any changes. I understand. I even hear the people that are making public comments saying, Councilmember Ellenboss, you're crazy with what you're saying because the people should run government. I agree with that, but the process matters. And I don't think the council, it just so happens that these two issues deal with making it easier for the citizens to propose changes. That's just happenstance. I would oppose us bringing forth any amendments to the charter unless it was like, oh, hey, state law changed. We can't have this now, but our charter says it. And so our charter is illegal. That's when the council should be proposing changes, not under this process. That's the basis of my argument, and I oppose this. And I don't think we need to wait the two weeks to analyze it, because it doesn't matter. We just shouldn't do it. Bring it to the Charter Review Commission or do a citizens initiative. That would be a better way than having the council bring it forward.
Karen, did you have something?
Yeah, I was just going to confirm that the beginning of August would be the date by which it needs to get to the auditor. It's 90 days. It has to be registered with the auditor at least 90 days before the general election.
Thanks, Karen. So further discussion on my motion to hold. Councilmember Donovan.
I might be in agreement with Ben about disagreeing with the motion to hold. But I maybe Ms. Frakes just convinced me of this. But there's, I think, some lack of clarity in the discussion here. This isn't about council being able to put things on the ballot. This is about voters being able to put things on the ballot that are charter amendments. And I think Mr. Brown's estimate of things that have been brought to you by the voters vastly, grossly overestimates anything that has ever been done by a citizen petition, because a referendum is simply something that was put on by the charter commission or the council. The 15%, nobody gets anything on as an amendment. So I wasn't really able to follow what Mr. Ellenboss was saying about us saying how we should be elected. This is about how the voters could say how we're elected, or how the voters could say what else is on in our charter. I'm really conflicted on the motion to hold this. I would say I'm not a fan of Tim Eyman's policies, but I'm probably the only, I know I'm the only person at Western who's ever invited Tim Eyman to come to my class to talk about the citizens initiative process and the power that brings to voters as a tool to lobby their elected officials. So I mean, if we maybe need more time to get these facts straight. But I mean, I'm ready to support this right now. I could be persuaded to hold it for 2 weeks, as long as, so that gets into, actually, how would this work? So it'd be an introduction item, the same item be introduced. So we could have a public hearing in 2 weeks. That would give us time, I assume, then to potentially get it on the ballot. But yeah, I'm ready to move forward.
Councilmember Byrd. Councilmember Byrd.
Sorry, Zoom is acting up on me. Well, what's the question to me?
You had your hand raised.
Oh, I apologize for that, Barry. I'll take it down.
Oh, okay, it's down now. Councilmember Ellenboss.
Oh, okay, thanks.
Yes. And again, right now, we're proposing something. Doesn't matter what it is. We are proposing something as council. We will vote on it. If we meet the threshold, it goes to the voters. The voters then vote on it. What I'm saying is that I oppose that. Because it will be a charter amendment. I oppose the council bringing forth charter amendments, regardless of what they are, unless it's something like I described earlier, where state law had changed and our charter was then, neutered, so to speak. I believe that is when the council should take action. I don't believe the council should propose changes to the charter, put it on the ballot outside of the charter review process, because like I've said over and over, that is us determining how we're going to operate and then presenting it to the people. And granted, they have the final say, but I'm assuming that we're going to write what the ballot initiative is going to look like, and we're going to have a ton of say in how it's written, and so on and so forth. In this particular incident, I'm not that opposed. In fact, I don't think I am opposed to what we are bringing forward to put to the voters. So I'm dying on the sword here because I'm opposed to the process of us doing it.
Councilmember Frazee, then Brown.
I heard that Councilmember Byrd had very specific questions. So I wanted to make sure that someone, or there's a process of how he's going to find that information in the next 2 weeks. Do we have anyone that's going to, I think some of those were to Councilmember Ellenboss, and I'm not sure who else, but I'm hoping we can get that information. to him.
Anything else on the motion to hold? Councilmember Ellenboss?
Yeah, I can help him. I can help him find the recordings of the meetings, and he can listen to the conversation. But like I said, the conversation as it pertains to the content of what we're talking about right now was in fact to lower the threshold for citizens initiatives and charter amendments. And so again, I'm not opposed to that. It's this process of us bringing it forward, and he can listen to that portion too. We could find it. I'm sure there's still tape around. Jill probably knows right where it is. It's probably on the county's website. It'll just probably take hours to listen to it.
Councilmember Frazier?
And then the numbers, though, the percentages, we can just do the math on those things.
Councilmember Frazier?
I didn't have another question.
Councilmember Donovan?
I guess I am speaking against the motion. We did put extra time on this so folks could look into it. We didn't just introduce it and then do it in 2 weeks. We put it off. This idea that this is something that just happened in the last election, or it isn't the case, that whether it was the 2018 or 2020 or 2012 or 2008 presidential gubernatorial election, those numbers are always fundamentally different and an insurmountable barrier than whether we're talking about, the 2017 or 19 executive race. So we can go back and look at the discussion at the Charter Review Commission, but we just never thought of that, that when we changed the numbers to try to make this more accessible. So I maybe I'll just abstain on the motion to hold, but I don't think we're going to find anything going back and looking at the Charter Review Commission that's going to change this obvious structural imbalance between whether it's a presidential / gubernatorial year, because Washington's governors are elected in presidential years, than compared to an off-year local election here in Whatcom County. That just wasn't something we thought about talking about then. It's not just something that just happened in 2020 or 20. Those numbers are going to be fundamentally different. So that's where I'm at.
Councilmember Brown?
I just want to add a little bit more color for the benefit of Mr. Ellenboss on the issue of fairness, and if he's supportive of the voters having the right. If you combine the number of times that the charter has been changed by ordinance, and I accept Mr. Ellenboss's comment that would include amendments proposed by the Charter Review Commission. If you combine the number of times the charter has been changed by ordinance with the number of times it's been changed by referendum, then that is 82 times, whereas the county council has 82 times been able to, county council / Charter Review Commission has 82 times been able to successfully propose items for the citizens to consider to change the charter, but the citizens have only been able to do it 15 times. And if you believe in that representative democracy, I'd have to think you believe in amending it to give them more right to do that.
Mr. Ellenboss?
I will champion it for you at the charter review process where it should be championed. If my memory serves me correct, I was in full support of lowering the percentage. I think it was Councilmember Donovan who was Charter Review Commissioner Donovan at the time that brought it up there as well. And I was fully on board. I'm not opposed to that idea, and I don't pretend it's a different issue. I'm standing on principle that I don't believe the council should be making proposing changes to the charter, even if the citizens still have the final vote on it someday.
Councilmember Donovan, then Frazee.
Yeah, and I testified Ben was supportive of this. So what, this question for the maker of the motion, I'm on the fence. So what do we do? 2 weeks is probably fine. So what do we do in 2 weeks?
I'm not sure if we have to rerun the hearing, Dana, do we? If we don't change anything?
No, you would not.
So,
what process of information gathering will we do?
well, it sounds like Ben is going to work with Tyler to on that side of things. Other than that, I'm not sure if anybody else got any ideas.
Yeah, that sounds totally doable.
Councilmember Frazee.
So we're sure now that if we do hold, there is enough time where it could go on the ballot this year. Is that correct?
Yep.
Yes.
We got Karen on the record.
Okay, so anyway, any further comments on the motion to hold? Seeing none, please call the roll.
Todd Donovan,
Yes.
Ben Ellenboss,
Yes, sorry, I couldn't hit the mute button.
Carol Frazee,
Yes.
Kathy Kirschner is absent, Red Brown,
Yes.
Barry Buchanan,
Yes.
Tyler Bird,
Hang on, Kathy. He just texted me something. He said, can you let Kathy know that Zoom has moved me to a participant?
Yeah, I see him there. He's under attendee.
Is there a way to move him back to a voting member?
Yeah, I'm here. Sorry about that. I don't know why it keeps doing that. I'll vote in favor of holding it.
Okay, thank you. Where are we in the vote? I'd lost count there.
that's everyone. It's 6-0 with Councilmember Kirschner excused.
Yes, that passes unanimously. Okay, thank you, council. Let's move on now to our open session. Could you rerun the video real quick? It's been a while since we did it tonight.
Welcome to the meeting. For instructions on how to join the meeting to speak, please visit whatcomcounty.us/join virtual council. Meeting information, including Zoom meeting link, phone number, webinar or meeting ID, and password are available under the meeting date at the bottom of the page. Members of the public may join the meeting online or by phone. The meeting is broadcast live and recorded. All speakers will have 3 minutes. When you've joined the meeting, please virtually raise your hand to request to speak. To virtually raise your hand online, click the hand icon at the lower area of your screen. To virtually raise your hand by phone, dial *9 on your keypad. Council staff will call on you by the name listed, or if you're joining by phone, by the last 3 digits of the phone number from which you're calling. When called upon to speak, click the microphone icon to unmute, or if joining by phone, wait till you hear a message indicating the host unmuted your phone. Please first state your full name for the record. Staff will announce when your 3-minute speaking time is up. Camera sharing will not be offered at this meeting. Thank you for joining the meeting.
Okay, Kathy, could you please call our first speaker?
The first speaker is Misty Flowers. Go ahead, please. State your full name for the record. You have 3 minutes.
Hello, my name is Misty Flowers. Thank you for your time. I was calling, I'm checking in tonight just to talk with you guys once again regarding this emergency use authorization vaccine that's being rolled out. You know, many of us choose not to get vaccinated because of medical reasons. Some of us have allergies to the ingredients. Some of us have had previous adverse reactions, or children have, to vaccines. And there has been no ability to reach out to the health department and let them know when there are issues happening. And as somebody who's been a longtime advocate for vaccine choice, I am receiving a lot of messages, private messages from people asking me how to help them with the vaccine reactions that they're having here in Whatcom County because they are not receiving help. And I am really concerned that there is no way for people that are having vaccine reactions to actually document that with the health department. And every council meeting, we listen to the health department explain the vaccine uptake and that there's a pressure, there's a push to get everybody vaccinated, but there's not any talk about vaccine safety or vaccine risk or any information that if anybody is having a reaction, how to get help. So I would really like the council to please let us know, people like myself that are advocates and that really care about human health and my community. If you can please let us know, who do we reach out to when there are vaccine reactions? Because at this point, there is no documentation, nobody is tracking it, and is extremely overwhelming and alarming how many vaccine reactions are coming in right now, especially with the younger people. Thank you so much for your time, and I will email you. And if you have any feedback, I would really appreciate it. Thank you for your time.
The next speaker is Dr. Richard Tran, followed by Dan Johnson. Go ahead, please, Dr. Tran.
Hello, my name is Dr. Richard Tran. I've been a chiropractor since 2003 and proudly serving Bellingham and its citizens since 2010. I've also played an active role and a supporting role in the Bellingham Chamber of Commerce and various non-for-profit organizations in our community. My message tonight is urging you to protect the individual rights of the citizens in our community. When COVID-19 initially came on the scene, we were very concerned as a clinic. To this day, we've asked COVID screening questions, done temperature checks, and even worn masks. We've also gone above and beyond to establish a clean environment where people can feel safe. However, as COVID progressed, we also noticed how the emergence of cancel culture wasn't allowing us to see both sides of the story and not allowing us to make decisions as professionals, as a community, and as citizens. Now, I'm willing to admit that I'm wrong. My wife will be the first to attest that I've been wrong before, but I want to be right. And often I find that the truth lies somewhere in the middle. So let's review some of the facts. Number one, people are being forced to wear masks even when there's valid medical reasons not to do so. They need to be respected and their rights protected versus being ashamed for conditions beyond their control. Number two, these vaccines are still being approved under emergency use authorization. It's more important now than ever that they be allowed to make informed choices about what they inject into their bodies. And that they choose not to, don't take away their rights to do things like attend public school or participate in everyday activities. Number three, your position as part of the city council gives you the opportunity to make a unique effect and represent the people. I want to suggest at least one of three actions that you could do. Just at least write one of these down. First is review both sides of the story. Look at stories from the Epoch Times in addition to NPR. There's some great stories over there that talk about Texas and the metrics that they've taken and how those have been improved even after ending the mandates. Number two, seek conversations that go beyond these 3 minutes. I'm happy to have these conversations with you, and I'll even pay for lunch. The third one is ensuring that policies represent inclusivity of the people and are not dismissive of the people. I've been listening to the Bellingham City Council, and I heard Erica Lockenbach talk about building bridges. I agree with that. Let's build bridges and support people's individual rights so the community is protected. Thank you.
The next speaker is Dan Johnson. Go ahead, please. You have 3 minutes.
Good evening again. I am Dan Johnson, and I have heard that the medical examiner will not be renewing his contract in 2022. With a nationwide shortage of forensic pathologists, I would like to know what our county executive is doing to seek replacement. We are now in June, and I am curious if this process has even started. My concern is that we will find ourselves in a spot where January rolls around and the current ME opts to not renew, and we are left hanging. If a replacement is not found, it seems reasonable that the county would call on the old examiner to help out on a case-by-case basis, no contract, pay-as-you-go type of scenario. But that could get expensive pretty fast. I would also like to bring up that we currently cut a check to our medical examiner's office for the amount of $605,000 per year without any oversight or audit abilities. Moving forward with a new person, I think it would be a great time to change the scope of services contract for the position of ME to a salary position, and the county provides all the necessary tools and equipment for running a county morgue. This would allow for financial oversight as well as added accountability of the job being performed. Second, I would like to talk about AB 2021-299 with regard to the council meeting earlier today. It was being discussed that a company is to be hired to provide security at a COVID-19 temporary housing facility on Byron Avenue in Bellingham and at local COVID-19 vaccine clinics. The cost would be over $70,000 for 3 months. Considering that there isn't anything a security officer can do that an already staffed and trained police officer can't, I think that this would be a great opportunity to run a pilot program. And since the money is grant money, it won't cost Whatcom County a dime. Let's talk to the folks over at the Opportunity Council and see if they can find us some social workers or counselors armed with clipboards, hugs, and a can-do attitude to replace security at these 2 locations. If that works, you can create a committee to go over the findings and possibly be the first people in human history to outperform an enforcement agency by simply using your words and talking it out. And if it doesn't work, we'll know for next time. That is all. Thank you for having me.
If anyone else would like to speak during open session, please raise your hand virtually by clicking the hand icon on your screen or by dialing *9 if you're joining by phone. The next speaker is Natalie Chavez. Go ahead, please.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, go ahead, please.
Hi, my name is Natalie Chavez, and I've lived in Bellingham for approximately 16 years. I want to speak tonight regarding SARS-CoV-2, the COVID-19 novel coronavirus, specifically the experimental COVID-19 vaccines. The experimental COVID-19 vaccines that are currently being administered in Whatcom County were rushed through the emergency use authorization process. The emergency use authorization status for developing experimental vaccines is intended for use only when effective treatment options cannot be found, and this was and is clearly not the case with COVID-19. Very effective and inexpensive treatment options for COVID infections and effective prophylaxis options to prevent COVID-19 have been readily available since last spring 2020. And about a week and a half ago, medical doctors filed a lawsuit, specifically a petition for temporary restraining order against Xavier Becerra, the U.S. Secretary of the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, and other listed defendants, to have Xavier Becerra and HHS suspend the promotion and rush to administer a COVID vaccine that has not been fully tested and approved. There is a statistically 0% chance of young people dying of COVID-19. To promote an investigational product that has no long-term studies, no animal studies, and to pressure parents and teens to use an experimental product that has not been fully approved by the FDA breaks all of the rules of medicine. The use of these experimental products for children, teens, and young adults is all risk and no benefit. We've never seen this level of side effects and deaths for any vaccine without the FDA taking action. The rotavirus vaccine was canceled for 15 cases of non-lethal side effects, and the swine flu vaccine was canceled for 25 deaths. But now, by the CDC's own data, we are seeing a 12,000% increase in deaths with these experimental COVID vaccines, and yet they are still being promoted to children, teenagers, and young adults. The survivability rate for COVID-19 for those under the age of 20 is approximately 99.997%. More than 4,000 deaths have been tied to the administering of the experimental COVID-19 vaccines in the last 4 months, as opposed to 1,500 deaths in the previous 10 years for all vaccines. That fact alone should be enough to stop the administration of this dangerous experimental COVID-19 vaccine. But the HHS, FDA, and CDC are clearly ignoring the science and data and putting the lives and well-being of our children, teenagers, and young adults at risk. And I request that the administration of all experimental COVID-19 vaccines in Whatcom County be immediately halted until the petition by medical doctors has been heard in court and until all of the experimental COVID-19 vaccines have been fully licensed and approved by the FDA, and until the experimental COVID-19 vaccines have undergone at least 2 years of long-term animal and human clinical trials. We are clearly not in a pandemic in Whatcom County, nor have we been for many months. So we owe it to our community to protect our community members, especially our children, teenagers, and young adults. Thank you.
If anyone else would like to speak during the open session, please raise your hand virtually by clicking the hand icon on your screen or dialing *9 if you're joining by phone. There are no other hands raised.
Okay, thank you, Kathy. We will close the open session and turn it back to council and Councilmember Brown and Finance Administration Services report.
Mr. Chair. Yep, sorry. I'll make sure my mic was on. Thank you, Mr. Chair. The Whatcom County Finance and Administrative Services Committee met this afternoon. We considered 10 items. Unfortunately, none of these are on the consent agenda, so we'll have to do them one by one. First item up was AB 2021-289, ordinance amending the 2021 Whatcom County budget. Request number 8 in the amount of $1,250,000. This received a vote of 3-0, and I so move.
Okay, we have that motion. Discussion. Councilmember Donovan.
I just want to thank the Land Trust. This is a really cool potential acquisition. You do great work. I'm really excited that this is going forward.
Yeah, I definitely echo that. It's really a great project. Other discussion? Councilmember Ellenboss.
This is the Skookum one, right? The Skookum Creek property acquisition?
Yes.
Okay, so I guess my only question is do the current owners plan, because I'm assuming that keeping in its natural state is probably the best way to go. Do the current owners have any intent of logging it or anything like that? Like what are we gaining by us acquiring the property versus leaving it how it is? And did we seek it out, or did the owners of the property approach us about it?
Alex.
Hello again, everybody. Yeah, so the current owners of the property are Weyerhaeuser, and they've been managing it as commercial forest land. Since they've owned it, they acquired it when they acquired Longview Timber, which I believe was in 2009. Longview was managing it as commercial forest land before then. So it has been managed as commercial forest land up until now and would continue to be if it stayed in private forest.
Other discussion on the motion? Seeing none, please call the roll.
Ben Ellenboss.
No.
Carol Frazee.
Yes.
Kathy Kirschner is absent. Rudd Brown.
Yes.
Barry Buchanan.
Yes.
Tyler Bird.
Yes.
Todd Donovan.
Yes.
That passes 5-1 with Councilmember Kirschner excused.
Next item up was AB 2021-291, request authorization for the county executive to enter into an interlocal agreement between Whatcom County and the City of Bellingham for logistical and administrative support services to Whatcom Unified Command in the amount of $60,000. This received a vote of 3-0, and I so move.
Okay, discussion on this motion. Being none, please call the roll.
Carol Frazee,
Yes.
Kathy Kirschner is absent. Red Brown,
Yes.
Barry Buchanan,
Yes.
Tyler Bird,
Yes.
Todd Donovan,
Yes.
Ben Ellenboss,
Yes.
That passes 6-0 with Councilmember Kirschner absent.
Next item up is AB 2021-292, request authorization for the county executive to enter into a contract amendment between Whatcom County and the Opportunity Council to support a single point of entry to connect families and professionals concerned about child's development to resources and services in the amount of $9,081 for a total amended contract amount of $89,230. This received a vote of 3-0, and I so move.
Discussion. Okay, let's vote.
Kathy Kirschner is absent. Red Brown,
Yes.
Barry Buchanan,
Yes.
Tyler Bird,
Yes.
Todd Donovan,
Yes.
Ben Ellenboss,
Yes.
Carol Frazee,
Yes.
That passes 6-0 with Councilmember Kirschner excused.
Next item up is AB 2021-298, request authorization for the county executive to enter into a contract amendment between Whatcom County and Northwest Workforce Council to provide reimbursement of wages and benefits for eligible temporary employees working in various COVID-19 related positions in the estimated amount of $94,000 for a total estimated contract amount of $220,000. This received a vote of 3-0, and I so move.
Okay, discussion on this motion. Okay, please call the roll.
Red Brown,
Yes.
Barry Buchanan,
Yes.
Tyler Bird,
Yes.
Todd Donovan,
Yes.
Ben Ellenboss,
Yes.
Carol Frazee,
Yes.
Kathy Kirschner. Sorry, Kathy Kirschner is absent.
That passes 6-0 with Councilmember Kirschner excused.
Next item up is AB 2021-299, request authorization for the county executive to enter into a contract between Whatcom County and Pacific Security to provide COVID-related security services in the amount of $71,736. This received a vote of 2-1, and I so move.
Okay, discussion on this motion. Councilmember Byrd.
Thanks. We're down 1, 2, on occasion 3 people there. We're still paying for these services to have security. And again, I'm just baffled a little bit. We're not doing this for anybody else. We find out someone else has come in contact that they may have COVID, and we're asking them to be responsible and self-isolate, and we send them a text message to check in. We're not taking the time to hire security and send it to their household. We're not even sending someone there to validate in any way that they're actually staying home. In the past, when we've talked about this, the argument has been like, hey, we need this service. Hey, we need this like site because the healthcare workers need a place to get away when they're working at the hospital and they're in high-risk situations, and they don't want to go home to their families where they might get their families, where they might be contagious and pass it on their families. So this is a great site for them. Those type of people, we don't need security holding them and ensuring that they don't leave the site, and we don't need security around that at all. And so to me, how is this legitimately, how is it different than a jail? If we're literally going to put people there and then require them to stay, and we're hiring security to enforce that and make sure that they stay there, how is it different than our jail or a prison?
Councilmember Ellenboss.
Yeah, it seems to me the folks that need to use the Byron Street facility, I would classify them maybe as the less fortunate. Now that might be a broad generalization, but somebody who doesn't have the ability to quarantine because of their living arrangements, I guess is how I'm imagining it. And when I had COVID and I had to quarantine, there wasn't security here making sure that I didn't leave my room or that nobody showed up to, to visit with me. And so when I think about it in those terms, it almost, when I heard the health director speaking and how the words she was saying made it sound compassionate that the security was there, but to me it sounded like the security was there because we were holding people against their will, almost as if they were in jail. And so I think that facility needs to be closed down. I don't think it, and if it stays open, it definitely shouldn't need security. And if it does need security, I feel like we're doing something wrong. So I don't support this. And quite frankly, I don't know how much more of these kind of expenditures I'm going to vote yes on, because I don't see a good exit strategy or any strategy at all of how we're unwinding our, our response here. And, hopefully there is one, but I would like to see it presented to us and to the public. So we know that there's an end in sight, because it just seems like we're ramping up our spending and our bureaucracy as it pertains to this. And yeah, I just look at this security contract as almost discriminatory towards, people that don't have a single family residence, and I'm not going to support it.
Councilmember Donovan.
We've had this conversation for over a year now, but I've never heard it framed in how's it different from a jail. Well, one way is the state required us to have an isolation and quarantine facility so that we could reopen and get out of phase 1 and get into phase 2. Another reason why we have security there is, well, this is a liability for the county that we're running this thing. And that there's 2 people there, and this is sort of like deja vu. We've been doing this for years. Like, the fewer people there, the better, which means we're doing better. We need less of an isolation and quarantine facility. But council members have been opposed to this when there are 20 people there or 2 people there. I do know that we're going to need to wind this down soon, and I think we heard some things about this. But yeah, comparing it to how is it different than a jail? The jail doesn't get us out of shutting everything down because of COVID. And this has been a success, and it has been utilized, and hopefully now it'll be utilized even less, and hopefully it'll be shut down because we won't need it. But right now, for liability reasons for the county, I think we need security there. And I think we've been doing this like Groundhog's Day over and over and over.
Executive Sadhu.
I'll just repeat what I have said before. Why do you have insurance for your house? You haven't had fire for the last 20 years. Why do you have insurance for your vehicles? You never had an accident for the last 10 years. I mean, there was a person in Everett a while ago, I don't remember the date, and he had a COVID and he disappeared and infected other people. And another thing is, if something goes wrong, that's when these things, like when you have an accident, then you look for the insurance policy. What did it say? How much it's going to pay me? Who's going to pay my medical expenses and things? I don't like this as much as you don't like it, spending the money. It's never been that that we are wasting money. This is a necessity, and we all do it in our own lives. That's all I have to say.
Councilmember Frazee?
Yeah, I'm going to support this because we need security there, but I believe we've made it clear that in September, if the numbers are down and there has to be some sort of exit strategy, okay, and make sure that we're not just continuing for unless it's needed. So I think many people on the council have made that clear, but until then, we're going to need security. We're going to need to keep paying that rent. And I think we're thinking September.
If I may, I want to add one more thing, that we did talk to the farming community. We are about to start the harvesting of the berries. And this has been experienced even in the Eastern Washington as well, that when you get transient labor, people are here working in 5-6 different farms and things. You know what is happening with the variants? What happened in British Columbia just like 3 weeks ago, 4 weeks ago? They shut down. People from Langley cannot go to Abbotsford. People from Langley cannot go to Surrey, and vice versa, because they needed to control that. What if some variant comes into our county and we do that, and then in middle of that harvest season, what do we do? I mean, there is a strategy. When people say that, oh, we don't know, there is no plan, or this is just like, I don't want to use any words. There is a plan, there is a strategy, and there is a budget, and there is an allocation, very consciously determined and consciously being executed.
Any other discussion on this motion? Okay, please call the roll.
Barry Buchanan,
Yes.
Tyler Bird,
No.
Todd Donovan,
Yes.
Ben Ellenboss,
No.
Carol Frazee,
Yes.
Kathy Kirschner is absent, Red Brown,
Yes.
That passes 4-2 with Councilmember Kirschner excused.
Next item up is AB 2021-301, request authorization for the county executive to enter into a contract between Whatcom County and Opportunity Council to provide funding for an outreach worker and consulting services to the homeless outreach team in the amount of $120,776. This received a vote of 3-0, and I so move.
Okay, discussion on this motion. Okay, let's vote on it. Back up, Councilmember Ellenboss.
Yeah, I'm sorry, Barry. How many years is this? Just a 1-year contract for this person, or will this be reoccurring?
Someone from the administration answer that?
What was the question? Sorry, I was a little bit away for a second. What is the question?
Is this a 1-year contract, or will it be reoccurring?
Contract.
Is it a 1-year?
The question is it a 1-year contract or is it a recurring contract?
With Opportunity Council?
Yes.
Maybe Tyler, maybe know more details.
So Tyler Schroeder, Deputy Executive, according to the contract for services, this is an extension through the 30th of June, 2022. So 1 year.
Do you anticipate that they'll be re-upping it, or is it somehow related to an increase in homelessness, or do you anticipate this will be something that we'll probably continue to budget for in the future?
Yeah, this is a long-standing program that the county's funded with Opportunity Council for the homeless outreach team. So there's a very good likelihood that this would continue beyond the 1 year timeframe.
Other discussion on the motion? Okay, please call the roll.
Tyler Bird,
Yes.
Todd Donovan,
Yes.
Ben Ellenboss,
Yes.
Carol Frazee,
Yes.
Kathy Kirschner is absent. Red Brown,
Yes.
Barry Buchanan,
Yes. That passes 6-0 with Councilmember Kirschner excused.
Next item up is AB 2021-302, request authorization for the county executive to enter into an agreement between Whatcom County and the County Road Administrative Board, CRAB, in order to receive rural arterial preservation grant funding for the Birch Bay Linden Road pavement rehabilitation project in the amount of $510,000. This received a vote of 3-0, and I so move.
Okay, we have that motion. Councilmember Ellenboss.
Do I need to disclose that I drive Birch Bay Linden Road every day in order for this not to be a conflict of interest?
That conflict of interest, you can't talk.
I think we're cool with that.
The exact rule is if you're voting on something for which benefits all the community and not you in any specific way, then you're exempt from the conflict of interest rules.
Any further discussion?
Yeah, we need some humor. It gets so serious.
Okay, seeing no more discussion, let's vote on this.
Todd Donovan,
Yes.
Ben Ellenboss,
Yes.
Carol Frazee,
Yes.
Kathy Kirschner is absent. Red Brown,
Yes.
Barry Buchanan,
Yes.
Tyler Bird,
Yes.
That passes 6-0 with Councilmember Kirschner excused.
Next item up is AB 2021-313, request authorization for the county executive to enter into a contract between Whatcom County and West Publishing for online database subscriptions in the amount of $151,680. This received a vote of 3-0, and I so move.
Discussion on this motion. Councilmember Ellenboss.
So as we all know, my internet's incredibly spotty sometimes, and I missed the discussion on this in committee. This is coming from the prosecuting attorney's office, so it has, I guess I'm not sure what the online database is. Is it something through the state?
Karen, can you answer that question?
I think I can. I wasn't involved with this, but
Muted.
yeah. We do our legal research through a tool provided by West Publishing. It's not through the state, it's through a private company. And it's, you know, what all lawyers use pretty much. I mean, there's another product, Lexis, but we use West Publishing. And just for me, I use it virtually every day on the job, as do most attorneys in my office.
Mr. Ellenboss and then Mr. Donovan.
So is it then open to any lawyer in Whatcom County since we use public funds, or does each individual lawyer need to have their own subscription?
No, it's a subscription for attorneys. I think, and I'm not sure about this, but I think that the law library gets a subscription, so it's available to the public in the law library.
Mr. Donovan?
Yeah, LexisNexis West are like, I won't call them evil monopolistic corporations, but they're very much tightly control who has access to whether it's like academic articles, law review articles, the stuff that Karen ever needs to. It's not open, and you got to pay for it, and they kind of got you by the throat. But there's not a lot of competition in the market.
Is there any further discussion? Please call a roll.
Ben Ellenboss,
Yeah, sorry, I had more questions, but my internet froze.
Oh, okay.
I'll abstain.
Are you sure, Ben? We can.
Well, I
Go ahead,
guess my question is yeah, I mean, I guess Todd probably nailed it. It's like, it seems like that information should be free and available to anybody, but people still got to make a living and make a buck. But yeah, I guess if we did not approve this funding, what would we do as a county?
Well, I can say you wouldn't get nearly the legal representation you get because we have the ability to research issues very easily and make sure that we're citing current authority. There's several databases, statutes, growth management cases, Washington case law, federal case law. I know George, who represents us on litigation, mostly tort litigation, finds Westlaw essential to his job.
What does it cost us to get it wrong?
A lot.
Councilmember Byrd.
Thanks. They actually don't like the idea of referring to them as an evil corporation. The information's out there, and they're providing a valuable service that other people aren't providing. And if they weren't there providing it for us, how much would it cost? It cost us a ton, right? And so we wouldn't have that same level of understanding or research available to us in our cases and how we decide them or how we approach them. And probably countless other things that we're using it for that we're not even aware of. So they've found a way to pull the information together in a way that it's valuable and it's helpful and it's helping us solve a problem, and they're charging for that. At the end of the day, would they be able to provide it for free? I mean, is that really, we're going to ask them to employ people and pay for it out of the kindness of their hearts because we don't want to pay for those same employees doing the work to build the software and put out the updates, do the research to pull the articles together in one space where we have them? I mean, they're doing the work that we don't have time to do. We should pay them for that. It's a valuable service. I applaud them for doing it, and I appreciate that it's available.
Councilmember Ellenboss.
And I can appreciate everything that Councilmember Byrd just said. However, in the same breath, we always talk about equity and how the privileged have life so much easier. And I guess, what if we were a county that couldn't afford $151,680? What would we do then? And so I guess I'm sort of just hypothesizing out loud, like, yeah, I'm going to vote for this because I want the best legal representation we can have. But in the same breath, is it fair? Is it equitable? Like some small rural county may not be able to afford it. And so, yeah, that's kind of, I guess we should just vote on it.
Mr. Byrd, is that a newly raised hand or is that the same one from last time?
Same one.
Okay, thank you. With no further discussion, let's call the roll, please.
Ben Ellenboss,
Yes.
Carol Frazee,
Yes.
Kathy Kirschner is absent. Red Brown,
Yes.
Barry Buchanan,
Yes.
Tyler Bird,
Yes.
Todd Donovan,
Yes.
That passes 6-0 with Councilmember Kirschner excused.
Next item up is AB 2021-315. Request authorization for the county executive to purchase a conservation easement from the city of Linden for Glenning Park in the amount of $250,000. The seat received a vote of 3-0, and I so move.
Okay, we have that motion before us. Discussion. Councilmember Ellenboss.
Yeah, in the earlier meeting, Councilmember Brown made a statement that the reason that we're having to pay for this is because Linden hasn't done a good job of raising their own money. I found that statement slightly unfair because I think if you look at the numbers of how much the people of Linden have paid into the Conservation Futures Fund versus how much they've taken out, I don't believe that that's an equal amount. And so because they haven't had to raise the money and they are paying into it to the tune of more than they've taken out, it seems like they're doing a fairly good job to me. And I'm going to speak in support of this.
Councilmember Brown.
I want to make my comments clear that my objection is not that they have put money into the Conservation Futures Fund. It's, as far as I know, they're the only urban jurisdiction that has taken money out of it to fund a park purchase that all other jurisdictions fund by having the appropriate amount of park levies and park impact fees. If you look at, I ran the numbers, if I remember correctly, Linden charges 1/5 of the amount that Bellingham charges, for example, for park impact for park levies, and has Linden, by its own admission, has recognized that their park impact fees are far lower than they should be, and recently increased them last year because of the accumulated shortfall. So that was the origin of the comment.
Further discussion. Okay, let's vote on this.
Carol Frazee,
Yes.
Kathy Kirschner is absent. Red Brown,
Yes.
Barry Buchanan,
Yes.
Tyler Bird,
Yes.
Todd Donovan,
Yes.
Ben Ellenboss,
Yes.
That passes 6-0 with Councilmember Kirschner excused.
And the final item from finance was AB 2021-316, request authorization for the county executive to purchase a conservation and public access easement from the Whatcom Land Trust for the Upper Skookum Creek property in the amount of $1,250,000. This received a vote of 3-0, and I so move.
Okay, discussion. Okay, seeing none, please call the roll.
Kathy Kirschner is absent. Red Brown,
Yes.
Barry Buchanan,
Yes.
Tyler Bird,
Yes.
Todd Donovan,
Yes.
Ben Ellenboss, Ben Ellenboss,
No.
Carol Frazee,
Yes.
That passes 5 to 1.
Double no.
Double no. No, you only get one vote though, so it's still 5-1. 5-1 with Councilmember Kirschner excused.
Mr. Chair, there's nothing else from finance.
Thank you, Mr. Brown. Okay, now from the Council Committee of the Whole, I have a AB 2021-185, ordinance amending Whatcom County Code 9.32, unlawful discharge of firearms to establish a no shooting zone in the Drayton Harbor area of Whatcom County. And Dana, I have a procedure question for you. This will go to introduction tonight, but we did do a recommendation to council for an amendment. Do we vote on that prior to placing it into introduction?
So the ordinance that I sent you this afternoon from Rudd, that Rudd had revised, that's the one, the revised version is the one that you're going to introduce tonight. And it's still going to have the same number, 185. Maybe I'm misunderstanding your question. I'm sorry.
Yeah, my question is, do we need to take any action on this other than introducing it? Because if I remember correctly, the motion was to recommend to the council that we amend it and reintroduce it.
Oh, right. Yes. So that would be correct.
Okay, so
you would go ahead.
Yeah, I think I know what to do.
Okay.
So in today's committee of the whole, it was moved, seconded, and approved by the council to go with Mr. Brown's revision. We'll have him dictate that to us in a moment, and then move it to introduction tonight. So, Mr. Brown, you want to reiterate your motion to amend?
Yes, and I just want to make sure everybody's clear that we discussed the reasons, and we discussed and agreed on the language for the ordinance. What we had not discussed was the language for additional whereases to explain the change, and I took the liberty of incorporating those, but I want to be clear, I'm not doing so with council approval. That has to be provided. So I want everybody to understand where we're at with that. So, and if I may, I'll start by reading the additional whereases, and I don't know if you want to vote on whether we accept those, probably the right procedural thing, and then the change. So the first whereas I did, which was again trying to capture the tone of what we were talking about, was whereas our local Native American tribal members have a limited number of sources to hunt wildlife they have used as an integral part of their cultural traditions since time immemorial, and whereas previous laws restricting non-Native Americans from hunting and fishing in areas where Native Americans have retained their rights under the 1855 Treaty of Point Elliott have resulted in tribal members becoming the targets of protests, discrimination, and in some cases violence. And where possible, the Whatcom, so there's a typo there, it should say, where possible, Whatcom County seeks to harmonize county laws with tribal treaty rights so as to reduce the potential for misunderstandings, conflict, and discrimination. And whereas the Lummi restrict tribal members from using firearms within a 1,000, there should be 1,000 feet of an occupied house. And so my first motion is to move the acceptance of those additional whereases.
Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
Councilmember Ellenboss seconds. And did you want to discuss? No, Mr. Donovan.
I'm not speaking against the proposals here, but it seems like we should just hold this in committee of the whole and do this rather than doing it as an introduction item and rewriting an introduction item. It seems a bit challenging. So that would be my preference.
Maybe Dana, could you speak to Mr. Donovan's suggestion?
Yeah, I'd like to agree with Mr. Donovan's sentiment on this. My preference is that we would hold it and do this in a committee of the whole.
This is Dana. That decision would be totally up to the council.
Councilmember Ellenboss?
I don't mind holding it. I kind of thought we had this discussion during the committee of the whole today, and in order to take action on it, we needed to do it tonight. So, but I don't mind holding it for another 2 weeks if that makes folks feel better. But I think that Councilmember Brown's whereas statements are truthful and factual, and that's why I seconded it. But I don't mind holding it if that's what everybody wants to do.
So Dana, now that we're kind of waded into this far, how would we just hold it? Would we just do a motion to hold and disregard the other discussion we had today and take it up anew next meeting?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, well, that sounds doable. So does somebody want to make a motion to hold?
Yeah, I'll move to hold it because there's nothing against the proposals here. Just I'm not accustomed to doing these in the introduction proceedings. So I would move to hold to committee of the whole. And Mr. Brown bring these to us.
Mr. Byrd seconds. Discussion. I think I saw Mr. Ellenboss first and then Mr. Brown.
I think what I hear Councilmember Donovan saying is that the process matters, and I agree.
Councilmember Brown?
Actually, there's a good reason to hold this, which is that the exhibit has to be updated anyway, so we might as well just get that exhibit updated and then continue the discussion.
Yeah, I agree. We definitely had to hurry this along after our afternoon meeting, so it might be better to take it up fresh next time. Councilmember Frazee?
Yes, and if possible, I'd like to hear from the Blaine City Manager again. That would be helpful.
Okay, so motion to hold, Councilmember Byrd?
Carol, I did call Michael, the Blaine City Manager, as well as the tribal members, and let him know what we talked about in committee today, and that this would be up, that they wouldn't necessarily need to attend tonight, but that they would want to attend in 2 weeks, and that we would get them an updated copy as well. So they were planning on being there. So if we're going to have this back in the committee of the whole, I think it'd be helpful if we sent them an email and invited them all to come and join that conversation too.
Further discussion? Councilmember Brown?
I'd just like to make the motion to hold and request staff to update the map.
You fine with that, Mr. Donovan? Okay, seeing no further discussion, let's vote.
Red Brown,
Yes.
Barry Buchanan,
Yes.
Tyler Byrd, Tyler Byrd,
Yes.
Ben Ellenboss,
Yes.
Carol Frazee,
Yes.
and Kathy Kirschner is absent.
Did you call Councilmember Donovan?
No, but I'm voting yes.
Okay, I thought you got skipped, Todd.
My apologies.
It passes six.
Okay, I don't.
I was looking out for you, buddy. Okay, so that passes 6-0 with Councilmember Kirschner excused. Next is AB 2021-186, an ordinance amending Whatcom County Code 9.32, unlawful discharge of firearms to establish a no shooting zone to be known as the Dearborn No Shooting Zone. That was discussed in committee of the whole today. It was passed and as a recommendation to the full council, and I so move.
You cut off there, Barry, but I will move to approve.
I'm sorry, I said, and I so move. Do we need a second?
Second.
Okay, discussion. Call the roll.
Barry Buchanan,
Yes.
Tyler Byrd,
Yes.
Todd Donovan,
Yes.
Ben Ellenboss,
No.
Carol Frazee,
Yes.
Kathy Kirschner is absent. Red Brown,
Yes.
That passes 5-1 with Council Member Kirschner excused. Next, we have executive appointments to boards, commissions, and committees. AB 2021-308, request confirmation of the county executive's appointment of Sandy Phillips and Janine Heinrich to the Bicycle Pedestrian Advisory Committee. Do I have a motion to confirm?
Move to confirm.
Second.
I have a motion by Donovan, seconded by Frazee. Discussion? Seeing none, please call a roll.
Tyler Bird,
Yeah.
Todd Donovan,
Yes.
Ben Ellenboss,
Yes.
Carol Frazee,
Yes.
Kathy Kirschner is absent. Red Brown,
Yes.
Barry Buchanan,
Yes. That passes 6-0 with Council Member Kirschner excused. Next confirmation is AB 2021-309. Request confirmation of the county executive's reappointment of Mark McDonald to the North Sound Behavioral Health Administrative Services Organization, ASO, otherwise known as ASO, Advisory Board. Do we have a motion to confirm?
Move to confirm.
Move to confirm. Second.
I'll take Tyler as the second. Discussion? Okay, please call the roll.
Todd Donovan,
Yes.
Ben Ellenboss,
Yes.
Carol Frazee,
Yes.
Kathy Kirschner is absent. Red Brown,
Yes.
Barry Buchanan,
Yes.
Tyler Bird,
Yes.
That passes 6-0 with Council Member Kirschner excused. Next is an item added by revision. This is we're going to strike this, right, Dana?
Correct.
So we'll strike that from the agenda for tonight since we have moved to hold it. We'll go to our regular introduction items. We have 3 items for introduction tonight. Do we have a motion to introduce?
Move to
Move
introduce.
to introduce.
Second. Try again.
Second.
Okay. Tyler moves, Council Member Donovan seconds. It looks like we have Dana might want to say something here.
Yes, please. I just wanted to remind the council that the American Rescue Plan Act ordinance is a substitute version.
Okay, thank you. Any other discussion on the motion to introduce? Seeing none, please call a roll.
Ben Ellenboss,
Yes.
Carol Frazee,
Yes.
Kathy Kirschner is absent. Red Brown,
Yes.
Barry Buchanan,
Yes.
Tyler Bird,
Yes.
Todd Donovan,
Yes.
That passes 6-0 with Councilmember Kirschner excused. Dana, did you have something else for us, or your hand, or is this a leftover hand? Thank you.
Sorry about that.
Oh, no problem. Okay, now we're at committee reports. The first committee we had this morning was the Committee of the Whole executive session, and we discussed some bargaining unit strategy. There was no action taken this morning. Next committee was Natural Resources. Mr. Donovan.
Natural Resources had 1 item, and it, for the first time in a long time, took more time than I think the Finance Committee did. So we considered an ordinance to change the Purchase of the Belt Right program to a Whatcom County Conservation Easement program, and discuss the scoring potential for not just agriculture, but agriculture, forestry, and ecological easements. And the committee voted 2-1 to recommend that council introduce this. And I don't know if I should do this here or when we do the introduction items. We did that it would be worth bringing this forward on the 29th rather than the 15th, so we have more time to do it when we went back to Committee of the Whole. So my motion is from the committee to introduce this, and my suggestion is that we wait at least till the 29th to put it on the agenda.
Okay, do we have a second to that motion?
Second.
We have a motion and a second by Councilmember Frazee. Discussion. Councilmember Byrd.
I thought the plan was to have this come back so we could discuss it more before we introduce it. Or are we having to introduce it to discuss it more? Is that the deal?
Yeah, if we introduce it, it'll be owned by committee of the whole. But I think it would be good for us to not just bring it back for a hearing in 2 weeks, but give it another 2 weeks. So, and this is maybe a question for staff, like, do we do this now? Because the recommendation from the committee was to introduce. And so that's what came out of committee. The other issue is, should we take more time on it, which I'm suggesting we do. And so we have a couple more weeks to ask staff, council members can get questions about that before we bring it to a public hearing.
Councilmember Byrd.
Yeah, I'm okay with the introduction. I just want to make sure that it comes back or that the committee. And my preference is that it doesn't show back up on the general session for a vote next week, the same week, because it's a big topic and there's a lot in there. So depending on how full our packet is, I want to make sure we have enough time to discuss it and we're not forced into voting on it prior to that. So I'd like Todd's idea of maybe we introduce it, bring it back to committee of the whole for more refinement, but not have it on the ballot or the general docket until afterwards, the week or the next session.
Committee of the whole would be the hearing, not a special committee of the whole. That wasn't, but this would give folks a couple more weeks, 4 more weeks, almost. Yeah, 4 more weeks, another month to follow up with things here. So, but right now, the recommendation out of committee was to introduce. The date that it is heard, I guess, is a different issue. So that the motion out of committee was to introduce.
Councilmember Ellenboss.
So,
sorry, Mr. Byrd, go ahead.
Okay, thanks. I was under the incorrect assumption that when we were talking about committee of the whole, we were talking about the committee of the whole we have every week at the end of the meeting. So if it doesn't go to that committee, will it at least come back to your committee then, Todd, for more discussion as a group? Or is it going to be left to council members to reach out individually? Because if there's things in there that we want to change or topics that come up, it's going to have to come back for a vote in general for refinement. So yeah, I'd like to see it back in an actual committee before it goes to the general.
I think the motion to introduce means it would go to a public hearing. We put that off for a month. Council members have a month to follow up on information. And I think Dana's hand is up because there's a procedural issue here in terms of whether we can do the scheduling now or the committee's recommendation was to introduce.
So this is Dana.
Dana, go ahead.
So the council has already introduced it. So this evening. So yes, the question now is just when we bring it back. And I think what you and I talked about today was committee of the whole in 2 weeks, public hearing in 4 weeks. That way, if there's changes that come out of committee of the whole in 2 weeks, we could reintroduce a new version if we needed to that night and still meet that hearing date.
I think that's what Mr. Berger was looking for.
Councilmember Ellenbach?
Yeah, so then we don't need to vote now, right?
We were just wanting a vote on when to schedule it, when to schedule the hearing so that we don't put it on the agenda in 2 weeks, people thinking that they're going to come and have a public hearing that night and then we're not ready for it.
Okay, so let me get, I could speak against the motion come out of committee then. So if we want to have it in committee of the whole and then be able to have time to do it on the 29th, we should not introduce it right now.
Nope, you can introduce it. Having it introduced now is fine. It's just setting the date for the hearing that we need to know in order to do what we need to do behind the scenes.
So just make sure everybody knows. So the motion is to introduce, then there will be 2 weeks from now a chance to have a committee of the whole hearing, not the public hearing, and then 2 weeks from then would be the public hearing.
Correct.
Correct. All right. Okay.
So I think what Dan is saying is the actual motion to reintroduce has already been done. We just did it under our introduction slate.
Okay,
Yes,
so my
that's
committee
correct.
report is, we do what Dana says.
We did it, and now we're going to do what Dana says. Councilmember Ellenboss.
We need a flow chart.
I agree.
Yeah, I like the flow chart at work that says if it ain't broke, don't fix it, but it is broke, so don't get me wrong here. What I would like, my request is that, and I'm going to specifically speak to the agriculture portion of this. I think we really need to look at real statistics around Whatcom County agriculture and not what we perceive as protecting agriculture. And some of the things I'm talking about is like, I believe, I don't recall when it was passed, but we passed an ordinance or resolution that said we needed 100,000 acres of ag land in order to protect a viable ag economy. That's why we needed to protect the land. It wasn't to serve an ecological function or protect water quality or any of those things, which it can do, but it was to protect a viable ag economy. And so if we think about that and we look at, I would encourage everyone in the meantime to look up our USDA statistics for Whatcom County. And I think you'll find some interesting things, and namely the average size of the average farm in Whatcom County. I'd also encourage you to look up what are the largest growing sectors of our ag economy here in Whatcom County, and I think the answers will surprise you. And if we're after protecting a viable ag economy, 40-acre tracts in a monoculture aren't helping. And so if we look at it from the perspective of the next generation of farmer, or from the perspective, say you owned a tractor, an implement company, would you rather sell one farmer an 85 horsepower tractor, or would you rather sell 4 farmers a 33 horsepower tractor to work their 10 acres? So like, just because there's a large tract of land doesn't mean that that's the best thing for a viable ag economy. There's the reality of what Whatcom County agriculture is, and what's best for Whatcom County agriculture moving forward may not be the intent of these protections that we're putting on the ag land. And so I would encourage everyone to look up those statistics, and I could help you find them if you need help. And the other thing is that we purchase development rights to then make them disappear. I think if we were really looking to help the situation, that would be more of a transfer of development rights. Move those development rights from one place to another place where they can still benefit folks by providing them a home or a habitat, if you will. And the other thing that I want to say is that farmers need to live on their land and where their farm is. That's just a reality of what farming is. And so when we think that removing a development right is protecting ag land, we might want to revisit that idea.
So we should clarify the motion.
Yeah, I think, Dana, could you repeat what you wanted our motion to be? Something about is scheduling, right?
Correct. That's what we need to know. We just need to know when we're going to do what Todd and I talked about today was 2 weeks from now, committee of the whole, 2 weeks following that, a public hearing.
So that wasn't the recommendation coming out of committee because we hadn't checked that out, but I think that's the course that we're all kind of looking for here.
So you want to?
I would move that we refer this to committee of the whole in 2 weeks, And then 2 weeks after that will be the public hearing.
I will second. Any discussion on that motion? Councilmember Byrd?
Is there a reason why we wouldn't just refer it to committee of the whole in 2 weeks, and then depending on that conversation, set the meeting for 2 weeks later if we're done? Or why set them both right now, I guess?
Committee of the whole will own it, so anything can happen.
Any further discussion? Okay, please call the roll.
Carol Frazee,
Yes.
Kathy Kirschner is absent. Red Brown,
Yes.
Barry Buchanan,
Yes.
Tyler Byrd,
Yes.
Todd Donovan,
Yes.
Ben Ellenboss.
Oh, sorry. No.
Okay, that passes 5-1 with Councilmember Kirschner excused. Right, next committee was Public Works and Health.
Yes, so we had John Hutchings and Jim Karcher. They talked about standards of good practice, the regional collaboration of funding requests through Whatcom Council of Governments, and connection to the transportation funding programs. They've also discussed the Whatcom County's recent funding propositions, and then an update on ferry replacement funding requests and current projects. So that was it from Public Works.
Okay, thank you. Next committee was the Council Committee of the Whole this afternoon. We had 2 presentations. The first one was our normal COVID-19 briefing from Erica. We heard about the anticipated closing now of the community vaccine center out. That would be 2 weeks from now, I believe. Is that, somebody correct me if I'm wrong. I believe it's in 2 weeks. Then the other presentation we have is regarding efforts to gather input from local stakeholders on the possible opening of a refugee resettlement office in Whatcom County. We talked about all of the guidelines and the procedures it takes to do that, and there was no action taken. Then we talked about the AB 2021-306 was about the American Rescue Plan, and Executive Sadhu laid that out very well in his address to us tonight. So we have that. And then the other 2 items were the no shooting zones, which we have taken care of tonight. So that was it for Committee of the Whole. Any other business? Councilmember Ellenboss.
Well, I don't know if it's business or if it's more of just a question to the executive's office, but I thought that the person that spoke in open session brought up a good point, because if I recall correctly, the medical examiner did tell us that he didn't plan on renewing, that he'd like to retire. And so do we have a plan moving forward on soliciting a replacement? Because I could imagine that that's probably a very hard position to fill with someone as good as we would want them to be, because they do very important work.
Executive Sadhu?
Yes, I think I thought about that as well, that maybe at the end I'll bring it up. Now it's glad that you did. Yes, there is a plan. We have been thinking actually right at the start of the year that we need some replacement. There are 2 or 3 different options. One of the option is that we say medical examiner in our charter, but there are a lot of places like our neighbor county, Skagit County, has a coroner, and whereas we can hire somebody else who can perform the autopsies and things, and have a medical coroner's office, which person doesn't have to have a medical degree, and they can do most of the stuff except the morgue itself and the autopsies. So we are looking into that. We have been open discussion with Skagit County about that, if we can share that. And there are some merits to that. We have talking to Snohomish County as well. They have a much bigger workforce, and they think 24-hour turnaround. They can do that. They can even come out here and do that. So this is in the works, and we are almost ready with the RFP to send out to solicit applications. We have been given a couple of leads to some people who may be possibly wanting to come here. And we are exploring that as well. So yes, this is very much in the works, and we are very much aware that this is an important function, and we have to find a replacement.
Yes, Mr. Ellenboss.
So you bring up an interesting idea, and I guess procedurally, doesn't the charter say that the council sets departments? So if we decided to go the route of setting up a coroner, would we need to draft something for you to establish a new department, or would they fall under, say, the sheriff's department or the health department?
We are in matter of exploring it, and we will bring the legal question to the council as well. We need a little bit more time, and I would say before end of this month, we'll be more prepared to talk more openly about it. But this is a topic we're very much on our mind, and we are working on a arrangement that would be more beneficial.
Councilmember Brown, did I see your hand go up earlier?
My question was answered by Mr. Sadhu.
Okay. Mr. Ellenboss?
Yeah, I was just wondering if the sole purpose of my mustache was to try and outcompete the executive. So how am I doing, Executive Sadhu? Is it worthy?
Oh, right.
Look at this.
It's not even a contest, Ben.
Councilmember Frazee.
And you took out Barry at the same time.
So I can't compete with any of that. Back to the idea of a coroner. It's my understanding that it's just an elected official. So any of us could be a coroner, or with no, I guess we'll have to learn more, but from the counties that when I went to the opening for when beginning counselors down in Olympia, I believe some of the counties had coroners with no medical experience, or they were just elected officials. So I'm not sure I'm a fan of that. So I do want to learn more if we do go in that direction.
You're right, but I totally agree with you that we're not looking for just a novice and give them a title and put them in there. No, we are looking for a professional. There are very professional people who may not have a MD or something, or who do not perform autopsies, but they do all the rest of the work. And there is a association and accreditation for this profession as well. So we are looking into that, and we'll bring more information to the council.
Anything else for the good of the order? Councilmember Brown.
I just wanted to acknowledge Mr. Ellenboss's idea about taking the development rights for buying them and applying them somewhere else. I think it's a good idea. So.
All right, folks. You have a great couple of weeks. We'll see you.
Thank you.
We're adjourned.